You know that highly specific, incredibly visceral kind of dread. You're driving down the interstate, the music is playing, the weather is perfect, you're making great time.
Oh, yeah.
And then completely out of nowhere, you hear this rhythmic, metallic grinding noise coming from like deep within the engine block.
It's the acoustic signature of a blown gasket or a failing transmission, just the sound of thousands of dollars evaporating.
Exactly. And consider human behavior in that exact fraction of a second. I mean, the rational move is to immediately pull onto the shoulder, right? Shut off the engine and call a tow truck to prevent further catastrophic damage.
Right, that's what you should do.
But what do most of us actually do?
Yeah.
We reach over the volume dial, turn up the radio, and just pretend we didn't hear a thing.
Yeah, we completely ignore it.
We deliberately drown out the warning signal
Right.
and just silently, desperately hope the machine magically heals itself while we're moving at 70 miles per hour.
Because acknowledging the noise requires immediate, painful action. It means dealing with the friction of, finding a mechanic, upending your entire schedule for the week.
Yeah, and confronting a potentially devastating bill.
Right. We calculate entirely subconsciously that the immediate psychological pain of facing the problem is it's worse than the physical risk of ignoring it.
And we do the exact same thing with our financial lives, often for decades at a time. Think about that baseline, vibrating anxiety you feel when you swipe a debit card at the grocery store and have to silently brace yourself for a declined message.
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
It really is. And we drown that out too. We swipe away the push notifications from our banking apps. We let the credit card statements pile up on the kitchen counter, unopened, gathering dust.
Out of sight, out of mind.
We actively avoid looking at our own data. And carrying that chronic low-grade panic every single day is absolutely exhausting. So today, we're going to pull the car over and fix the engine. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are talking directly to you today because the mission of this specific conversation is entirely about transforming that paycheck-to-paycheck panic into an automated, sustainable system of financial control.
And doing it fast.
Yes, exactly. We're going to explore how to do it in a highly compressed timeline of exactly 6 months.
Which, transforming your entire financial reality in 6 months sounds hyperbolic on its face. But the framework we are analyzing today makes it mathematically and psychologically achievable.
Yeah, we are drawing from a highly structured, comprehensive blueprint laid out by the YouTube channel Ivan Invests.
And the distinguishing factor of the source material is its complete rejection of typical personal finance platitudes. It's really refreshing.
There is zero talk here about manifesting wealth or visualizing a yacht or hoping for a cryptocurrency moonshot. We're just reporting what the framework actually requires.
Right, and the system also doesn't rely on the assumption that you have a massive dual-income household or a six-figure tech salary or some inheritance waiting in the wings. It operates on the premise that you are starting from a place of average income and above-average stress.
Which is where most people are. The source outlines a highly specific, psychology-backed system that relies entirely on sequential data gathering and mechanical automation. It completely removes the concept of willpower from the equation.
Because relying on sheer willpower is a trap.
Exactly. Relying on willpower to consistently bypass the coffee shop or to manually transfer money into a brokerage account every month is a statistically proven losing battle for the vast majority of human beings.
Willpower is a heavily studied finite cognitive resource. It runs out. The architecture of the system is designed to build an automated infrastructure around your life so that you simply do not need willpower to build wealth.
You remove the human error component from your own financial trajectory.
Precisely.
So here is the narrative arc for our deep dive today. We are providing you with a rigorous onboarding guide to this 6-month plan, but we are placing a massive disproportionate emphasis on conquering month 1.
Because the data shows month 1 is the graveyard where most financial resolutions die.
Yeah, that's where people give up. We will organize these 6-month goals from the path of least resistance, initial data tracking, all the way to the most mathematically impactful stage, which is putting your entire wealth building apparatus on autopilot.
Right.
We are going to explore how systematically removing manual decision-making creates sustainable, long-term lifestyle freedom. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because before we can even begin to discuss asset allocation or compound interest or debt triage, we have to address the absolute largest, most paralyzing hurdle standing in your way. And that hurdle is your own neurobiology.
Yeah, the source material addresses this immediately by bringing in a well-documented concept from behavioral economics known as the ostrich effect.
The metaphor of the ostrich burying its head in the sand to hide from a predator.
Exactly. In behavioral finance, the ostrich effect describes the cognitive bias where investors or individuals actively avoid negative financial information.
Like ignoring the bad news.
Right. They will intentionally ignore their portfolios during a market downturn or avoid looking at bills when cash is tight. From an evolutionary perspective, the brain perceives that low bank balance not just as numbers on a screen, but as an acute existential threat to survival.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. It triggers the exact same amygdala response as encountering a physical predator in the wild. Your brain is literally reacting like it's being hunted.
That is wild. The Monday morning phenomenon perfectly illustrates this, I think. You have a weekend where you perhaps went to a few overly expensive dinners, bought rounds of drinks you hadn't budgeted for.
We've all been there.
Right. And when Monday rolls around, you actively refuse to open your banking app.
You are choosing willful ignorance to protect your immediate emotional state. The brain concludes that processing the negative data will flood your system with cortisol, so it simply blocks the data intake.
Trying to help you.
It is. But this is a profound evolutionary mismatch. Avoiding a physical predator by hiding out of sight might occasionally work in nature. Avoiding your financial reality triggers the exact opposite outcome.
It makes it so much worse.
As the source emphasizes, avoidance compounds the danger. By shielding yourself from the acute, sharp stress of observing the negative number, you generate a massive, chronic background stress that degrades your cognitive bandwidth every single day.
Returning to the engine noise analogy, turning up the radio protects you from the sharp fear of the mechanic's estimate in that specific 5-second window.
Right.
But for the entire rest of the road trip, your shoulders are locked with tension, your jaw is clenched, you are terrified the vehicle will completely seize up in the middle of an intersection.
Because the ambiguity of the threat makes the fear paralyzing?
Exactly. But the relief of finally taking the car into the shop and seeing the diagnostic report, even if the report says you need a new transmission, even if the financial hit is going to be severe, is infinitely better than that daily ambiguous dread. Because now, it's just a math problem.
What's fascinating here is how the source describes the rapid physiological and psychological shift that occurs the exact millisecond you force yourself to observe the unvarnished data.
It's an instant shift.
It really is. When you confront the numbers head-on, clarity instantly overrides the anxiety.
The internal monologue shifts completely. When you exist in the ostrich state, your brain is trapped in a looping algorithm of terrifying, unanswerable what-ifs.
Yes. What if my card is declined in front of this client?
What if I literally cannot make rent next week?
What if I am permanently ruining my retirement prospects?
Those are phantom threats. They cannot be fought because they lack dimensions.
But the moment you observe the data, even if the data confirms you are objectively broke, the internal narrative switches from a paralyzing what if to a highly pragmatic what's next.
You hand your prefrontal cortex a concrete problem.
Exactly. You give it a dimensional problem to solve rather than allowing your amygdala to run away from a ghost.
That specific transition is the required foundation for this entire 6-month blueprint. If you are listening to us right now and you recognize that you have a habit of archiving bank emails without opening them or letting the mail pile up, you have to acknowledge the emotional trap you have built for yourself.
You really do.
You absolutely cannot progress to month 2 or attempt to optimize your wealth in month 6 until you make this psychological pivot. Moving from avoidance to proactive financial ownership is the prerequisite for everything else we're about to discuss.
The source material is uncompromising on this point. You simply cannot build a durable financial structure on top of an actively shifting foundation of denial.
So how do we operationalize that shift? The blueprint lays out a remarkably specific onboarding protocol for month 1. And the most surprising element of this protocol is that it strictly requires 0 behavioral changes regarding your spending.
None whatsoever.
Like nothing at all.
The architecture of month 1 is brilliant because it aggressively lowers the barrier to entry. If you mandate that a financially stressed individual must immediately stop consuming caffeine out, liquidate their vehicle, and adopt a subsistence diet on day 1,
Are gonna quit.
inevitably, they will abandon the system by day 3. The cognitive load is simply too high.
The friction causes complete system failure. Therefore, month 1 is dedicated exclusively to the acquisition of raw data. The blueprint refers to this phase as establishing your core 4 numbers.
For 30 consecutive days, your sole objective is to track these 4 specific metrics.
Just track.
Just track. The first metric is your net income. And it is crucial to define net income accurately, as many individuals conflate their gross salary with their actual purchasing power.
Oh, this happens all the time.
Right. If your employment contract states you earn $80,000 annually, your net income is absolutely not $6,600 a month.
You have to strip away the theoretical money and look at the physical money. Net income is the exact, tangible dollar amount that clears the ACH transfer and lands in your checking account after federal taxes, state taxes, health insurance premiums, FICA, and any automatic 401k deductions have already been extracted.
Yes.
It is the unvarnished reality of your monthly inflow.
Metric number 2 is your fundamental expenses. And the source applies a remarkably strict, almost austere definition to this category.
It's bare bones.
Bare bones. This represents the absolute bare minimum required for physical survival and maintaining employment. We're talking about your housing cost, rent, or mortgage basic utility infrastructure like water and electricity, foundational groceries, and the essential transportation required to travel to your place of income.
It aggressively strips away lifestyle inflation. Fundamental groceries means rice, beans, chicken, vegetables. It does not mean organic matcha powder and artisan cheeses.
Exactly. The purpose is to reveal your baseline cost of physical existence.
Okay, what's next?
Metric number 3 is categorized as future you money. This captures any capital allocation you are already executing toward your future.
So like a savings account.
Right. This could be a recurring $50 transfer to a high-yield savings account, or the existing contributions to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. The goal here is just to capture the existing flow, not to increase it yet.
And the final metric, number 4, is the fund spending. This is the capital that remains after the first 3 categories are accounted for.
The fun stuff.
Right. It represents the money allocated to the hedonic treadmill, the minor and major pleasures that provide immediate lifestyle satisfaction. Dining out, digital subscriptions, premium coffee, weekend travel, impulse purchases.
To capture these core 4 metrics accurately over a 30-day period, the source heavily emphasizes the deployment of low-friction tracking mechanisms. They advise against complex double-entry accounting software.
Nobody wants to do that anyway.
No, it's exhausting. They recommend utilizing a secure, API-linked mobile application that automatically categorizes transactions, or a radically simplified spreadsheet if you prefer manual entry.
The friction coefficient has to remain as close to 0 as possible. If the tracking methodology requires you to hoard physical paper receipts, boot up a desktop computer every Sunday evening, and manually reconcile line items for 2 hours, the habit will fracture.
It just won't happen.
The single overriding mandate for these 30 days is observation without intervention. No judgment, just data.
That is the rule.
But I need to push back on this premise pretty hard.
Okay, go for it.
Let's say I am executing this month 1 tracking protocol. I reach day 14. I open up my low friction tracking app, and I realize with absolute profound horror that I am actively bleeding $900 a month on food delivery apps and casual dining.
A very common realization, by the way.
Or I discover I am being billed for 3 different streaming services I haven't logged into since last year. Are you genuinely telling me I shouldn't immediately cancel those subscriptions?
Yes.
I shouldn't delete the food delivery app from my phone that exact second. Why would the system demand that I passively watch myself hemorrhage capital for another 16 days?
I get it. Your instinct to immediately staunch the bleeding is entirely logical, but the source explicitly forbids it for reasons deeply embedded in cognitive behavioral psychology and systems theory.
Which are?
If you attempt to optimize the system while you are still calibrating the measurement tools, you invalidate the baseline data. Furthermore, you trigger a massive spike in allostatic load.
Explain allostatic load in this context. What does that mean?
Sure. Allostatic load refers to the cumulative burden of chronic stress and life events on the body and brain. When a beginner suddenly attempts to track every penny, simultaneously slash their discretionary spending to 0, cancel all their comfort mechanisms, and confront their historical debt all in the first week, they max out their cognitive bandwidth.
It's just too much all at once.
It is. The brain interprets this sudden, massive behavioral shift as severe deprivation. It rebels against the austerity. This is why individuals who attempt extreme financial overhauls usually experience a severe elastic snapback.
Like crash dieting.
Exactly like crash dieting. They end up binge spending a month later just to relieve the psychological pressure.
So it's like trying to adjust the sails on a ship while you are still trying to figure out which direction the hurricane is blowing. You have to measure the wind speed first before you start frantically pulling ropes Otherwise, you just capsize the boat faster.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. Month one is not about optimization. It is entirely about desensitization.
Getting used to the reality of the numbers.
Right. You are neutralizing the emotional volatility of your financial life by converting abstract fears into concrete data points. The system acquires you to know that your natural, uninhibited state of existence currently costs $900 in food delivery. You need 30 complete days of pure, unmanipulated telemetry.
The raw data.
Yes. Only after your brain has fully accepted the reality of that unvarnished data are you psychologically equipped to begin executing strategic, sustainable adjustments.
The data from month one reveals your actual vulnerabilities, which forces the necessary action in month two. You are trading the chaotic pile of unopened mail in your mind for a clean, emotionless spreadsheet.
Exactly.
And that clarity is what launches you into the second phase of the blueprint.
Right. So month two represents the inflection point where passive observation transitions into aggressive behavioral modification. The objective is highly targeted, building the 1 month buffer.
This is where we buy freedom. You refer back to the core 4 data, specifically the fundamental expenses metric you isolated in month one.
The survival numbers.
Exactly. If your rent, basic utilities, survival groceries, and commuting costs equate to exactly $2,800, your singular obsessive mission for month two is to stockpile $2,800 in liquid cash.
The source advises entering a state of temporary, intense financial lockdown to achieve this. This is the phase where you execute the drastic behavioral cuts. You sever the unused subscriptions. Finally, yes. You halt all discretionary dining and prepare meals exclusively at home. You freeze all non-essential consumer purchases.
It requires a severe deceleration of lifestyle. And to execute this without psychological burnout, we have to examine the evolutionary biology of consumption.
This is crucial.
Human beings possess a deeply ingrained cognitive bias toward hyperbolic discounting. We heavily prefer smaller, immediate rewards over larger, delayed rewards.
We want it now.
Right. For the vast majority of our evolutionary history, deferring the consumption of resources was illogical because tomorrow's survival was never guaranteed.
You ate the berries today because you might get eaten by a tiger tomorrow.
Exactly. Therefore, the act of saving capital literally registers in our primitive brain circuitry as a loss. It feels identical to physical deprivation.
If you frame this month as a period where you are punishing yourself or depriving yourself of the joy of a restaurant meal, your willpower will inevitably fracture.
You'll give in.
You will. The required cognitive reframe is to view the accumulation of this cash not as a restriction, but as a direct purchase. You are buying a highly specific product, a 30-day buffer between your life and total financial ruin.
We must emphasize the catastrophic sequence of events that occurs when people attempt to bypass this step. Many well-intentioned individuals try to leap straight into investing in the stock market, or they aggressively overpay a student loan while maintaining a liquid cash balance of near zero.
They leave themselves entirely exposed to the variance of reality.
Precisely. Without a 1 month buffer, any deviation from a perfect month becomes a cascading crisis. The alternator in your vehicle fails. You sustain a minor injury requiring an emergency clinic visit.
Stuff happens.
And because you lack the liquid capital to absorb the event, you are forced to finance the emergency via a credit card carrying a 24% annual percentage rate.
You are effectively financing your own misfortune at a premium.
I look at this 1 month buffer exactly like installing a high-end shock absorber on a downhill mountain bike.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. If you ride a rigid frame bicycle down a boulder-strewn trail, the kinetic energy of every single impact transfers directly through the frame into your wrists and spine. A relatively minor rock can literally snap your collarbone or throw you over the handlebars.
Ouch!
That rigid frame represents living paycheck to paycheck. Every unexpected invoice shatters your equilibrium. But when you install the shock absorber, the cash buffer, the terrain doesn't change. You still hit the same rocks. The alternator still fails.
But the bike doesn't break.
Exactly. The suspension system compresses, absorbs the kinetic energy of the impact, and allows the chassis of your life to remain stable. You keep riding forward.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the installation of that shock absorber facilitates a profound neuroplastic shift. It marks the precise moment an individual transitions out of the chronic stress of survival mode and enters the cognitive space of planning mode. Planning mode. That sounds so much better. It is. When you possess the empirical knowledge that next month's survival is fully capitalized and sitting in a checking account, the baseline frequency of panic drops to zero.
You can finally breathe.
Right. You stop making panicked, short-term decisions out of desperation and begin making calculated, long-term decisions from a foundation of absolute stability.
You stop reacting to the water level and finally start learning how to navigate the current, which triggers the transition into month 3, because while stability is phenomenal, stability alone does not equal wealth.
No, it doesn't.
The shock absorber stops new emergencies from destroying you, but it doesn't stop the historical bleeding.
Right, which is why month 3 is where the blueprint demands rigorous mathematical triage. The phase is titled debt triage, and it establishes a ruthlessly objective threshold for managing liabilities.
The source draws a hard line in the sand. Any liability carrying an interest rate exceeding 8% is officially classified as bad debt.
Bad debt.
We are discussing revolving credit card balances, personal unsecured loans, and certain high-interest auto loans. The mandate is to attack this bad debt with overwhelming financial force, executing the payoff in strict order from the highest interest rate descending to the lowest.
The avalanche method. And conversely, any liability carrying an interest rate below 8%, such as a fixed-rate mortgage or a subsidized student loan, is reclassified as low-interest debt. The source utilizes a brilliant framing for this. They call it annoying but not urgent.
Let's pause here because this directly contradicts a massive segment of popular personal finance media.
It really does.
A lot of highly visible financial gurus preach the snowball method, where you ignore the interest rates entirely and just pay off your smallest balances first to get quick emotional wins. They argue the psychology of the quick win is more important than the math. Why does this source aggressively demand the avalanche method highest interest rate first instead of the snowball method?
It is a phenomenal point of debate within behavioral finance. The snowball method is essentially financial training wheels. It optimizes for dopamine rather than net worth.
It feels good, but it costs you.
Right. It relies on the assumption that the individual is so behaviorally fragile that they require constant emotional validation to stay on the path. However, the blueprint we are analyzing assumes that by completing the rigorous data tracking of month 1 and the intense austerity of month 2, you have already hardened your psychological resilience.
You don't need a pat on the back anymore.
You don't. You don't need the artificial dopamine hit of closing a $200 account when you have a $10,000 account compounding against you at 29%.
You have graduated from needing gold stars.
Precisely. From a purely mathematical standpoint, prioritizing a smaller balance with a lower interest rate while a massive high-interest balance compounds in the background, it is the equivalent of applying a Band-Aid to a scraped knee while completely ignoring a severed femoral artery.
That's a graphic image.
But it's true. The high-interest debt is an active, catastrophic bleed of your future net worth.
There is also a severe emotional trap that the source identifies here, which is the desire to treat all debt as morally equivalent. People feel this immense societal pressure to be entirely debt-free, so they will artificially split their available capital.
This happens all the time.
They will send an extra $200 to a 3% mortgage while simultaneously revolving a balance on a 20% credit card.
Which is mathematically indefensible. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of the cost of capital. Furthermore, individuals often attempt to split their capital between saving, investing, and paying down various debts simultaneously.
Trying to do everything at once.
Right, and the source notes that this fractured approach results in a loss of momentum. The capital is spread so thin that the individual fails to make a tangible dent in any single category.
So month 3 says pick one target.
Exactly. Month 3 requires you to consolidate all available capital, every dollar identified as fund spending in month 1, any localized side income, and focus it like a concentrated laser beam onto the highest interest liability until the bad debt is entirely eradicated.
And the moment that high interest debt is neutralized, the blueprint transitions you seamlessly into month 4. This phase is termed the Split Focus Emergency Fund.
The fortress.
Right. The objective scales up from the 1-month buffer of month 2, aiming to establish a robust 3 to 6 month fortress of liquid cash.
And the duration of the fund is dictated by the variance of your income. 3 months is sufficient for a dual income household with highly stable tenured salaried positions.
Sure.
But 6 months is mandatory for single income households, freelancers, commission-based sales professionals, or anyone operating in an industry prone to cyclical layoffs.
But the source introduces a massive pivot in month 4 that defies traditional, austere financial advice. The prevailing wisdom often dictates that you must freeze your entire financial life, no investing, no wealth building, until that massive 6-month cash pile is fully funded.
The blueprint rejects that premise entirely, recognizing the psychological detriment of sideline fatigue.
Sideline fatigue, yeah.
If you demand that an individual accumulate $20,000 or $30,000 in liquid cash before they are permitted to participate in the wealth-building process, they will experience a profound sense of missing out. They will watch equity markets compound for years while their capital sits in a static account.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Month 4 introduces a bifurcation of your capital. You finally begin the process of investing while simultaneously completing the emergency fund.
Yes, the mechanism is a specific phased split.
Tell us how that works.
Once the high-interest debt is eliminated, you direct your available capital using a 70-30 ratio. 70% is allocated to aggressively finishing the emergency fund, while 30% is diverted into investment vehicles.
And as the cash reserves hit key milestones, the ratio dynamically shifts to 50-50.
Exactly.
And ultimately, once the 3 to 6 month fortress is fully capitalized, 100% of your available monthly surplus is aggressively deployed into wealth building.
It solves the psychological problem of sideline fatigue. You are continuously advancing on 2 fronts, fortifying your defensive perimeter while simultaneously expanding your offensive capabilities.
Let us examine the actual mechanical execution of that investing phase, because the source deconstructs it beautifully for the layperson. The absolute first step of investing, prioritizing above all other asset classes, is maximizing employer-sponsored benefits.
The easiest win.
Right. If your corporation offers a 401k matching program or a pension contribution match, capturing that match is non-negotiable.
The source rightly identifies this as a literal 100% risk-free return on your capital. It is an anomaly in the financial markets.
It's free money.
Literally free money. If your employer offers a dollar-for-dollar match up to 5% of your gross salary and you decline to contribute that 5%, you are effectively volunteering for a pay reduction. You are leaving thousands of dollars of untaxed compensation on the table annually, which over a 30-year career translates to hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost compounding potential.
Once the match is captured, step 2 dictates the utilization of tax-advantaged accounts. In the United States, this predominantly refers to the Roth IRA. In the United Kingdom, the stocks and shares ISA.
These are essential.
The blueprint heavily emphasizes these vehicles, but it's critical to understand why. These accounts aren't investments themselves, they are tax-exempt wrappers.
We must delve into the mathematics of taxation on compounding growth to understand the power of these wrappers. If you invest in a standard taxable brokerage account, you are subjected to capital gains taxes and dividend taxes annually,
Which drags everything down.
It creates a persistent drag on your compounding velocity. But a tax-advantaged account like a Roth IRA operates in a post-tax environment. You contribute money that has already been taxed, but the extraordinary benefit is that all future compounding growth and all eventual withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free.
It's basically a shield.
You are sheltering decades of geometric growth from government taxation.
And step 3 details what assets to actually place inside those tax-advantaged wrappers. The blueprint offers an incredibly relieving philosophy for the uninitiated. You do not need to acquire a Bloomberg terminal.
No, please don't.
You do not need to analyze balance sheets, interpret candlestick charts, or attempt to identify which artificial intelligence startup will dominate the next decade. The source's explicit directive is simply to avoid being an idiot.
Which is perhaps the most statistically sound investment philosophy ever articulated.
Instead of attempting to select individual equities, the strategy relies exclusively on broad market index funds, or exchange-traded funds, commonly known as ETFs.
We should briefly unpack the mechanics of why an ETF is mathematically superior for the retail investor.
Yeah, let's do that.
When you purchase single stocks, you are exposing your capital to profound unsystematic risk. The risk that the specific company's management commits fraud or their product becomes obsolete.
Like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. An index fund mathematically eliminates unsystematic risk. When you purchase a single share of an S&P 500 ETF, you are acquiring a fractional ownership stake in the 500 largest publicly traded corporations in the United States simultaneously.
You aren't attempting to pick the winning horse. You are effectively buying the entire racetrack.
Furthermore, indexes are self-cleansing. If a company within the top 500 begins to fail and its market capitalization drops, it is automatically removed from the index and replaced by a rising company.
So it manages itself.
The index fundamentally guarantees that you always own the most successful, dominant corporations in the economy without requiring any manual oversight or trading execution on your part.
The blueprint frequently references the historical performance of the S&P 500, noting an average annualized return of roughly 10.5% over long-term, multi-decade horizons. While short-term variance can be extreme, the long-term smoothing effect of the broader global economy provides the heavy lifting.
You simply inject capital, abstain from tampering with the allocation, and allow decades of corporate productivity to compound your wealth.
Which brings us to a fascinating pivot in the strategy. Up until this point, in months 1 through 4, every action has been defensive or optimization focused.
Cutting expenses, neutralizing debt, sheltering capital.
Right. But you eventually hit a mathematical floor.
The floor of frugality. You can ruthlessly optimize your budget, but you can only ever reduce your expenses down to 0.
You can't negative spend?
No, there is a hard mathematical limit to how much capital you can free up by cutting costs.
Month 5 introduces the offensive strategy, the income lever. Because while there is a floor to how much you can save, there is mathematically no ceiling to how much you can earn.
The blueprint introduces a highly pragmatic framework for evaluating your current mode of employment. It posits that any professional role must consistently provide you with one of 2 distinct variables: a learning opportunity or an earning opportunity.
The ideal scenario is obviously a role that provides both simultaneous skill acquisition and high compensation.
But if you find yourself entrenched in a position where you are no longer acquiring high-value marketable skills that increase your leverage, and you are not being compensated at a level that facilitates your wealth-building timeline.
The blueprint says get out.
Yes, the blueprint dictates that remaining in that role is a critical failure. You must actively engineer a transition.
Yet, an enormous percentage of the population remains entirely stagnant. They stay anchored in undercompensated roles for a decade out of a misguided sense of corporate loyalty.
Or simply because the cognitive friction of updating a curriculum vitae, enduring interviews, and facing potential rejection is perceived as too overwhelming.
But the empirical reality is that aggressively negotiating your compensation, or strategically changing employers, is the single most powerful lever you possess for accelerating the trajectory of your net worth.
Absolutely.
So how does the blueprint advise executing that negotiation? Because for the average person, walking to a manager's office to demand more money triggers a massive stress response.
The blueprint mitigates that stress by shifting the paradigm of the conversation entirely away from emotion and anchoring it strictly in data and market mechanics. You absolutely never request a compensation increase because your rent has escalated.
Or because you want to buy a house.
Or because inflation is high. Your personal financial obligations are irrelevant to your employer's balance sheet. You negotiate based on asymmetrical information and market value.
You construct a sterile, irrefutable business case for your own value.
The specific methodology is highly structured. First, you compile exhaustive data on the current market compensation for your specific role in your specific geographic market for someone with your exact years of tenure.
Come with receipts.
Always. Second, you document a quantified list of your direct contributions over the preceding 12 months. Did your actions directly generate revenue? Did your operational efficiencies reduce corporate overhead?
Prove what you did.
Third, you present this matrix of market data and personal ROI to management.
And the final directive of month 5 is perhaps the most critical. If management declines the adjustment, you do not accept it gracefully and return to your desk for another year. You immediately initiate the search for better opportunities.
The source explicitly notes that corporate loyalty is a commendable trait, but not when it is mathematically costing you tens of thousands of dollars in lost compounding wealth over a decade.
Let us deconstruct the actual mathematics of why that uncomfortable conversation is so vital. It is easy to dismiss a minor salary bump as inconsequential, but the math tells a wildly different story.
Yes, the blueprint provides a staggering example of this exact math. Assume you endure the friction, you execute the negotiation, and you secure a $5,000 annual increase in compensation.
Okay, $5,000.
After factoring in marginal tax rates, that translates to approximately $400 additional dollars appearing in your net monthly income.
Which on a day-to-day basis does not feel like a paradigm-shifting amount of capital. It is incredibly easy to passively absorb $400 into your existing lifestyle.
Which is the exact definition of lifestyle creep. The individual receives the raise, they upgrade their vehicle lease, they integrate an extra premium dinner into their monthly routine, and suddenly that $400 is vaporized.
Poof, gone.
They feel exactly as financially constrained as they did before the negotiation. However, the blueprint illustrates the alternative timeline.
The wealth timeline.
Right. If you rigorously defend against lifestyle creep, if you take that precise post-tax $400 every single month and aggressively deploy it into the broad market index funds we discussed in month 4.
At compounding.
The geometric compounding over a 10-year horizon is explosive. Over a single decade, that specific $400 monthly contribution adds nearly $50,000 to your total net worth.
Wow. It is a phenomenal demonstration of the time value of money. An uncomfortable 20-minute conversation in a manager's office today physically manifests as $50,000 of autonomous wealth a decade from now.
It is the raw power of your capital independently generating further capital.
The source also explores alternative mechanisms for pulling the income lever if a corporate negotiation is structurally impossible. They advocate for the monetization of niche skills, engaging in high-value freelance consulting, or constructing digital scalable income streams.
Participating in the specialized creator economy or high-leverage gig economy.
Exactly. Even the addition of $200 to $300 of monthly supplemental income, when subjected to the same rigorous investment protocols, radically compresses the timeline of the entire 6-month blueprint. It operates like an accelerant poured directly onto the fire of your compound interest.
And once that fire is established, once the inbound capital is optimized, the high-interest liabilities are extinguished, and the defensive liquid reserves are fully capitalized, you arrive at the absolute apex of the system's architecture.
Month 6. The autopilot blueprint. This is the stage where we systematically dismantle the threat of decision fatigue.
We must delve deeply into the psychological mechanics of decision fatigue, because it is the silent, invisible force that destroys the majority of well-intentioned financial plans.
Sneaky.
Very. Extensive psychological research, particularly regarding the concept of ego depletion, demonstrates that human willpower is not a static character trait. It is a highly volatile, depletable biological resource. Every single cognitive choice you execute throughout your day, from selecting your wardrobe in the morning, to navigating complex interpersonal dynamics in a corporate meeting, to analyzing data, drains your available cognitive battery.
So by 8 o'clock in the evening, when you are required to make the manual decision of whether to log into your banking portal and transfer $100 into your brokerage account, or simply execute a one-click purchase on an e-commerce platform for immediate dopamine, your cognitive battery is at zero.
Precisely. As the volume of decisions increases, the quality of those decisions predictably degrades. The human brain, seeking to conserve glucose and energy, defaults to the path of least cognitive resistance.
You order the heavily processed food delivery instead of preparing the nutritious meal.
You ignore the financial dashboard instead of executing the planned capital transfer. If your financial architecture relies on you manually summoning discipline every single day, month after month, year after year, statistical probability dictates that the system will eventually fail.
So the antidote to inconsistency, the absolute core secret to sustaining long-term, multi-decade wealth accumulation, is not attempting to artificially inflate your discipline. It is architecting an environment that entirely removes the need for discipline to exist.
It is the wholesale integration of automation.
The blueprint prescribes a rigid step-by-step methodology to fully automate the logistical flow of your capital. Step 1 focuses on automating your defensive obligations. Right. You must configure automatic recurring ACH transfers for every single fixed liability. Your rent or mortgage, utility infrastructure, insurance premiums, and the minimum required payments on any remaining low-interest debt. This mechanism entirely neutralizes the risk of late payment penalties and mathematically guarantees the protection of your credit score from the inevitability of human error.
The capital is deployed before your brain even registers its existence in the account.
Step 2 focuses on automating your future accumulation. You synchronize automatic routing into your liquid savings and your brokerage accounts to trigger on the exact day your employer payroll is deposited. This is the mechanical execution of the most fundamental law of wealth generation. Pay yourself first.
Which requires a cognitive shift in how you view your future self. You must prioritize your future financial autonomy as your single most important creditor.
Before anyone else gets paid.
The capital must flow into the investment vehicle before the utility company is permitted to draw their share.
Step 3 is the most behaviorally intelligent aspect of the entire blueprint. It requires the creation of a strictly segregated checking account exclusively for daily variable spending.
I love this part.
This is how the architecture physically operates. Your employer's payroll deposit lands in account A. Instantly, the automated defensive obligations are drawn out. Simultaneously, the automated wealth investments are routed out. Whatever capital remains in account A is then automatically forwarded into account B. Account B is your designated fund money.
It is an entirely guilt-free containment zone for discretionary spending.
Exactly. The capital resting in account B is allocated for the hedonic treadmill, the dining out, the hobbies, the premium coffee. The overarching rule of the blueprint is that you can deploy this capital with absolute impunity, without an ounce of guilt, because your future is already fully funded.
But there's a hard boundary.
Yes, the hard boundary remains. When account B hits 0, consumption ceases until the next automated cycle. But let me push back on this architecture. Doesn't completely removing yourself from the operational flow of your capital create a dangerous disconnect?
How do you mean?
Well, doesn't putting everything on autopilot breed complacency? I can easily see someone arguing that to truly manage wealth, you must remain intimately manually involved in every single transaction.
It is a valid concern, often raised by those accustomed to micromanaging their lives, but it fundamentally misinterprets the goal of wealth management. Think about the climate control system in a modern building.
Yeah.
You would never argue that you need to manually ignite a furnace, monitor the ambient temperature every 20 minutes, and manually extinguish the flame to maintain a comfortable 72 degrees. That level of micromanagement would be maddening. It would consume your entire day.
Right.
Instead, you utilize a thermostat. You program the desired environmental outcome, and the automated system monitors the variables and executes the necessary mechanical actions in the background. If the ambient temperature drops, the system independently initiates the heat.
The financial automation is the thermostat for your net worth.
Exactly. Automation is not abdication, it is delegation. By delegating the repetitive, low-value mechanical execution to software, you preserve your highly valuable cognitive bandwidth for high-level strategic thinking.
And it protects you from yourself.
It physically prevents you from falling into the psychological traps of market timing or emotional consumption, because the capital is mathematically allocated before your brain has the opportunity to rationalize a detrimental purchase.
Month 6 guarantees that your wealth will continue to compound even on your absolute worst, most physically exhausted, most emotionally depleted days. The infrastructure carries the load.
It absolutely does.
But as with any high-performance system, it cannot be abandoned entirely. Even the most advanced automated systems require periodic diagnostic checks.
Which leads directly to the final phase of the blueprint: maintenance and the overarching philosophical objective of the entire 6-month endeavor. The source mandates a highly structured quarterly review protocol to ensure the automated systems remain aligned with the reality of your life.
Every 90 days, you are required to execute a diagnostic checklist.
It is a vital realignment. The first diagnostic question: are the parameters of my automated savings still accurately aligned with my current strategic goals?
Like if a goal changes.
For example, perhaps you are heavily capitalizing a specific fund to acquire a vehicle. If the vehicle has been acquired, that automated flow must be manually redirected to accelerate the retirement portfolio, rather than pointlessly accumulating in a stagnant account.
The second diagnostic question involves the income lever. Has my compensation increased in the preceding 90 days? If you successfully negotiated a salary increase or received an annual bonus, you must immediately adjust the automated investment routing to capture that newly acquired capital, thereby neutralizing the threat of lifestyle creep before it can manifest.
The third question probes for efficiencies. Can I mathematically increase my baseline savings rate? Have specific liabilities been fully amortized? Have expensive habits been organically phased out of my lifestyle, freeing up additional capital for deployment?
And the fourth diagnostic focuses on macro environmental awareness. What alterations to the tax code have been legislated? What new investment vehicles or regulatory changes have emerged? As your net worth scales from thousands to hundreds of thousands, your strategic responsibility shifts from mere accumulation to sophisticated protection and tax mitigation.
When you step back and evaluate the entirety of this 6-month trajectory, the psychological metamorphosis is staggering.
It's night and day.
Consider the baseline reality of the listener traversing month 1. Existing in a state of chronic avoidance, experiencing physical stress responses at the point of sale, attempting to navigate the modern economy burdened by the ambient terror of the ostrich effect.
And contrast that with their operational reality upon completing month 6. Their defensive liabilities are neutralized automatically, their liquid shock absorber is fully pressurized, their high-interest debt is eradicated, and their capital is autonomously compounding in the global equity markets.
They have fundamentally neurobiologically re-engineered their relationship with capital.
There is a specific observation from the blueprint that perfectly crystallizes this phenomenon. Most people radically overestimate the structural changes they can execute in a single month, but severely underestimate the compound transformation they could achieve in 6 months of focused sequencing.
We are conditioned by consumer culture to demand immediate, frictionless results. And when the initial data gathering phase of month 1 does not instantly produce immense wealth, the fragile abandon the system.
But adhering to the rigid 6-month sequence completely rewrites the mathematical reality of your life.
This raises an important question, however. What is the ultimate philosophical purpose of this entire endeavor? The meticulous tracking, the aggressive debt elimination, the complex orchestration of automated routing? What is the actual dividend being paid?
It is certainly not just to accumulate a superficially high integer on a digital banking interface.
No, the blueprint explicitly links this entire mechanical architecture to the concept of absolute lifestyle freedom. The execution of this 6-month system buys you decades of operational breathing room.
True wealth is not defined by the possession of luxury assets. It is defined by the possession of options. It is the acquisition of time, and most critically, it is the acquisition of walkaway power.
The ultimate utility of compounded wealth is the unassailable power to say no.
Yes. Consider the individual trapped in a deeply toxic corporate environment, subjected to an abusive hierarchy, but existing entirely paycheck to paycheck. They are a hostage to their own liabilities.
They can't leave.
They must endure the psychological damage, because the failure to secure Friday's payroll means eviction by the end of the month. But contrast that with the individual who has executed this blueprint. They possess a fully capitalized 6-month fortress of liquid cash, 0 high-interest liabilities, and a heavily funded brokerage account.
That individual can walk into a toxic environment, accurately assess the situation, and simply state, I am terminating my involvement here.
You possess the financial leverage to walk away from any situation, any geographic location, or any relationship that is actively degrading your quality of life. You have literally purchased your own autonomy.
You transition from being a passive victim reacting to external crises to being the active architect designing the parameters of your own existence.
So, to comprehensively recap the sequence of this blueprint, it initiates with the brutal honesty of month 1, neutralizing the ostrich effect through emotionless data gathering.
Month 2 mandates the rapid capitalization of the 1-month shock absorber to stabilize the chassis of your life.
Month 3 demands the ruthless avalanche-style eradication of all high-interest debt.
Month 4 introduces the 70-30 split, prioritizing tax-advantaged compounding while finalizing the liquid fortress.
Month 5 requires the aggressive manipulation of the income lever through calculated negotiation or skill monetization.
And month 6 deploys the automated routing infrastructure to entirely eliminate decision fatigue and guarantee continuous execution.
It is a mathematically sound, behaviorally optimized, sequential blueprint.
It is an architecture that mathematically cannot fail if the sequence is strictly adhered to.
It really is. And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought regarding the underlying mechanics we have discussed today. We have spent the last hour meticulously analyzing how the ostrich effect, the psychological avoidance of negative data, paralyzed your financial potential, and how the combination of 30 days of raw tracking and automated systems provided the ultimate cure.
The transition from willful blindness to automated execution.
Exactly. So examine the rest of your life through that precise lens. What other domain of your existence is currently generating chronic, low-grade stress? Perhaps it is your biometric health and physical fitness.
Or a stagnant career trajectory.
You're a rapidly deteriorating personal relationship. What other complex, terrifying area of your life could you fundamentally revolutionize by simply forcing yourself to stop ignoring the grinding noise in the engine?
It's a powerful question.
What would happen if you applied the month 1 protocol to your health tracking, your raw, unvarnished biometric data for 30 days without a single ounce of judgment or behavioral change? And once the fear is neutralized by data, how could you build a sequence of automated habits that physically prevent you from failing?
It's universal.
This blueprint is not just a mechanism for optimizing your net worth. It is a universal framework for systematically taking control of reality. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Your immediate directive is clear. Secure a low-friction tracking mechanism and initiate your 30 days of judgment-free observation today. We will see you next time. So, I want you to imagine something with me for a second. Just like, picture yourself standing in line at your local coffee shop.
Oh yeah, we all know that exact environment.
Right, exactly. You know it well. There's that sharp, sudden hiss of the espresso machine doing its thing.
Purging the steam.
Yeah, purging steam. And you've got this low, comforting hum of morning conversations all around you. People are chatting.
The soft clatter of the ceramic mugs hitting the saucers.
Yes. And of course, there's that rich, dark smell of roasted beans, the kind of smell that usually just signals, an optimistic start to a really productive day.
It's a great sensory experience normally.
Normally, yes. But for you right now, in this specific scenario, I'm thinking, well, none of that sensory input is comforting at all.
It's the opposite, right?
Exactly. It is completely suffocating because you are staring up at this brightly lit menu board and your eyes are just totally locked onto the price of a standard everyday latte.
Just a normal latte.
It's a normal latte. And it costs exactly $4. $4.
Which, I mean, under everyday circumstances, you wouldn't even blink at that number.
You really wouldn't. You'd just order your drink and tap your contactless card on the little machine. Grab the cup and just move on with your life.
You wouldn't dedicate a single brain cell to it.
Not one.
Okay.
But the problem is, you've just checked the banking app on your phone while you were waiting in line.
Oh no. That is always a dangerous move.
It is. And you look at the screen and you see that you have exactly $41 to your name.
Wow. Just 41.
Not 41,000. Literally $41. And suddenly that $4 latte, well, isn't just a warm beverage anymore, is it?
No, it absolutely is not. It becomes this massive, paralyzing, monumental financial decision.
Because it represents like nearly 10% of your entire liquid net worth.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a profound, almost visceral moment of just total financial paralysis.
Visceral is the perfect word for it.
Because that $4, right, it represents this very thin, incredibly fragile line
Between
participating in normal, everyday society and falling completely off the edge into total insolvency.
Oh man, that is terrifying.
It really is. When you're operating with that severe level of scarcity, every single microtransaction feels like a life or death calculation.
Right, because your brain isn't just making a casual choice anymore.
Exactly. Your brain is no longer functioning in a state of executive planning. It's functioning in a state of pure primal threat detection.
Wow. Threat detection over a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But I mean, that makes total sense. The cognitive load of that calculation is just exhausting.
Completely exhausted.
And that feeling of absolute crushing paralysis, well, that was the reality for a man named Derek.
This is the subject of our deep dive today.
He's our Derek. He was 34 years old, staring at that exact coffee shop menu and just agonizing over his $41 checking balance.
And what did he do?
He made the hard choice. He walked out of the shop that morning without the coffee.
Kept the $41.
He kept it. And honestly, it is an incredibly good thing he did, because later that very same afternoon, Derek would actually lose his job.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me. That is brutal.
Brutal timing, right?
Yeah.
But here is the incredible, almost unbelievable arc of this narrative we are looking at today.
Okay, I'm ready.
From that absolutely bleak morning of having $41 and a looming catastrophic job loss, well, Derek went on to build a net worth of over $235,000.
$235,000.
Yes. And he paid off his 30-year mortgage 3 years early.
That is massive.
He built a life of absolute, unshakable financial peace.
Yeah.
And the kicker, the part that sounds fake.
Let me guess.
He did it all, starting with a daily savings habit of just $3.
Just $3 a day. I mean, it sounds mathematically impossible when you frame it like that.
It really does, jumping from $41 to nearly $250,000 on a blue-collar trajectory.
Yeah, because the human brain really struggles to comprehend exponential growth.
Right, we just think in straight lines.
Exactly, so people immediately assume there has to be a catch, like a hidden variable that makes the story relatable but ultimately inapplicable to their own life.
Oh, for sure. They assume he had a sudden lottery win or like an unexpected inheritance from some long-lost aunt.
Or maybe some incredibly lucky leverage bet on a random cryptocurrency, right?
Right. But the actual mission of our deep dive today is to fundamentally deconstruct how this happens without any of that magic.
No magic, just mechanics.
Exactly. We are going to translate Derek's incredible 20-year journey into a highly actionable behavioral blueprint tailored specifically for you, the listener.
Which is so important because even if you consider yourself highly financially literate, understanding the raw psychological mechanics of this transformation is just vital.
It really is. And if you're listening to this right now and you are the one currently trapped in that scarcity mindset,
It's a $41 mindset.
yeah, feeling that deep sense of overwhelm whenever the topic of wealth even comes up, well, we're going to show you exactly how the mind is hacked to escape that trap.
And that is what makes this specific exploration so incredibly valuable. We aren't just going to recite the mechanics of compound interest or the tax advantages of different banking structures.
Boring. We've heard that a million times.
Right. This is fundamentally a masterclass in behavioral psychology and behavioral economics.
Okay, I love that framing.
Because it's about the deeply ingrained neurological pathways that keep us trapped in scarcity. And it illustrates with clinical precision how shifting out of a survival mindset is the true underlying engine of wealth creation.
So wealth isn't just math.
Not at all. Wealth isn't just an output of mathematical formulas. It is a direct reflection of human behavior interacting with time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can actually start dissecting the blueprint for building wealth, we really have to establish the starting line.
We have to know where he began.
Right. We need to thoroughly understand the psychology of having absolutely nothing. And we need to examine this completely chance encounter that interrupted Derek's downward spiral.
Because you can't cure a disease without understanding its pathology, right?
Exactly.
And we absolutely need to understand his baseline because it is the silent, pervasive reality for millions of people today.
Yeah, it's not unique to him at all.
No, it is essentially the default state of the modern working class.
So let's look at Derek's background. He didn't grow up in a state of extreme, like Dickensian poverty.
He wasn't destitute.
Right, it wasn't this traumatic, chaotic childhood defined by constant eviction notices or utility shutoffs. But he also completely lacked any financial education.
There were no money talks at the dinner table.
None. His parents were just ordinary, hardworking people. They clocked into their jobs, they paid their bills on time, and they survived.
But they never sat him down to explain the velocity of money.
No. Or how inflation erodes purchasing power, or what a basic asset allocation even looks like.
So when Derek entered adulthood, his brain simply defaulted to the only financial model it had ever been exposed to.
Which is you exchange your labor for cash.
You exchange that cash for survival.
And then you just repeat the cycle until you die.
It is the classic, inescapable paycheck-to-paycheck loop.
The loop, yeah.
And what is truly insidious about this specific loop is the complete lack of obvious cinematic recklessness.
Oh, I like how you phrased that. Cinematic recklessness.
Yeah, because Derek wasn't out there financing luxury sports cars at a 20% interest rate.
He wasn't maxing out high-yield credit cards on designer clothing or flying first class to lavish vacation destinations.
No, his money was simply vanishing into the brutal, mundane reality of everyday existence.
Rent.
Gasoline to get to work.
Groceries just to maintain his caloric intake.
Maybe a couple of beers with his friends on a Friday night just to feel human.
Right, exactly. And by the end of every single month, the account balance was inevitably back to zero.
Or sometimes a few days before payday, it even dipped below zero.
And this brings us to a really crucial observation about the visceral reality of being broke.
Let's hear it.
It is rarely one massive explosive disaster. It is almost always a slow drip.
Yes, the slow drip. This is a profoundly important concept in behavioral economics.
Also,
Well, when society imagines financial ruin, it usually pictures dramatic bankruptcies, foreclosures, devastating market crashes, or sudden medical catastrophes.
the big dramatic events.
But real, everyday systemic poverty doesn't announce itself with a megaphone. It creeps in through the floorboards.
Creeps in through the floorboards. I mean, that is exactly what it feels like.
It is the highly rationalized decision to skip your routine dental checkup this year because you simply cannot cover the $75 copay.
Or it's putting off the oil change in your aging car for another 3,000 miles, right?
And then pushing it another 3,000, hoping the engine just magically holds together.
Right. It's saying maybe next month to basic necessary life maintenance so many times that the phrase maybe next month completely loses all semantic meaning.
You just become entirely numb to the degradation of your own life.
Totally numb. You just accept the slow, inevitable decay of your financial architecture.
Precisely. And why is this slow drip so incredibly dangerous?
Why?
Because it breeds profound apathy.
Apathy.
The human nervous system has a remarkable, and in this case, highly detrimental ability to adapt to its surroundings just to conserve energy.
So we just get used to it.
Exactly. When you are constantly operating in a low-grade, unrelenting state of financial delay and deprivation, your brain eventually normalizes it.
The acute panic of a bouncing check subsides.
And a heavy, quiet, chronic apathy takes its place. You stop fundamentally believing that things can be better.
So your brain just stops expending the energy required to try and make them better.
You give up without even realizing you've given up.
Okay, so Derek is deeply, perhaps hopelessly embedded in this slow drip. And we go back to the day he didn't buy the $4 latte.
The inciting incident.
Right, he drives to work at a local distribution warehouse, and exactly 20 minutes into his shift, his floor supervisor pulls him aside and fires him.
20 minutes in. Wow.
And this is actually the third time he has been let go in a 2-year span.
Which is a huge blow.
It is. And the apathy is so thick that he doesn't even argue. He doesn't ask for a second chance.
Because he's just used to the defeat.
He just quietly grabs his jacket, walks out to his car, and leaves. Yeah. He ends up driving to a small, unremarkable park near his apartment complex.
Just needing somewhere to go.
Yeah, he sits on a weathered wooden bench and just stares blankly at the concrete. And this is the moment he meets a complete stranger named Marcus.
Then Marcus is an incredibly grounded archetype in this narrative.
Really is. Paint a picture of Marcus for us.
Well, he is described as being in his early 70s, wearing a faded, worn-out canvas jacket with cheap reading glasses hanging around his neck on a cord.
Okay, so very unassuming.
Very. He has a coarse gray beard. He basically looks exactly like someone's grandfather, but specifically the kind of grandfather who has been through enough brutal hardship in his own life that he has completely stopped pretending for anyone's benefit that life is easy or fair.
I love that description. He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, not at all. So Marcus looks over at Derek, who is practically vibrating with despair at this point.
Yeah, Derek's a mess.
And Marcus says, "You look like a man carrying a heavy bag of rocks."
A heavy bag of rocks.
He immediately recognizes the hollow look of a man who has just watched his livelihood evaporate, because Marcus freely admits he's been in that exact position himself 3 times over the decades.
So they start talking. And they don't talk about abstract macroeconomic theory, right?
No, they talk about real, tangible money.
The kind of money that dictates whether you eat protein or carbohydrates that night.
The stakes are that immediate.
And then Marcus leans in and delivers the advice that effectively alters the trajectory of Derek's entire life.
He calls it the 1% wealth rule.
He looks Derek in the eye and tells him every single paycheck you'll ever get for the rest of your life before you touch a single dollar to pay a bill, take exactly 1% and put it somewhere you can't see it.
Don't think about it.
Don't calculate if it's actually worth it. Just move it.
It is a radically, almost aggressively simple proposition. And frankly, it sounds almost insulting when you're sitting in the absolute depths of an existential financial crisis.
Right. And I actually have to push back hard on this because to me it sounds like motivational nonsense.
Okay, let's hear the pushback.
Let's just look at the actual math here. 1% of almost nothing is practically nothing.
It's pennies.
Exactly. Derek just got fired. He has no paycheck. But let's assume he gets a minimum wage job tomorrow. If he brings home, say, $400 a week, Marcus is telling him to save $4.
$4 a week.
Meanwhile, real inflation is running at 3 or 4%. The cost of housing is skyrocketing, and a single unexpected medical bill could be $1,000.
Easily.
So saving $4 a week in a zero-interest account while inflation eats your purchasing power is mathematically self-destructive. It's like trying to bail out a sinking ocean liner with a plastic teaspoon.
That is a very fair mathematical critique.
I mean, is Marcus just giving him a psychological pacifier here? Like a gimmick?
What's fascinating here is the underlying behavioral mechanism that Marcus is instinctively exploiting.
Okay, so it's not about the math.
Not initially. Your mathematical critique is absolutely correct in a vacuum. Economically speaking, saving $4 a week against systemic inflation is a losing battle.
Okay.
But you are looking at this purely through the lens of compound interest and macroeconomic forces rather than through the lens of neurobiology.
Neurobiology.
Okay, you have my attention.
This isn't about capital accumulation right out of the gate. It is about cognitive behavioral therapy. It is literally exposure therapy for financial trauma.
Okay, that is a massive pivot. How does saving a single dollar amount to exposure therapy? I don't see the connection.
We have to look at the amygdala.
The fear center of the brain.
Exactly. The part of the brain responsible for processing fear and threat detection. When someone is in extreme financial distress, when they are carrying that heavy bag of rocks, telling them to adopt standard financial advice triggers a panic response. Like what kind of advice?
Like telling them to save 15 or 20% of their gross income.
Right. If you tell a broke person to save 20%, they'll laugh at you.
Or they'll panic. The brain's threat detection system flares up and says, absolutely not. If we lock away 20% of our resources, we will starve.
We will be evicted.
Exactly. This action is an immediate threat to our survival. And so the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain, it just shuts down.
The person rejects the idea entirely.
And they continue to save absolute zero.
Ah, I see. So by demanding only 1%.
Marcus is deliberately setting the threshold beneath the amygdala's tripwire. He is completely bypassing the brain's panic response to financial restriction.
Because the brain doesn't perceive $4 as a threat to survival.
Exactly. The entry fee is so impossibly ridiculously low that your brain cannot formulate a valid logical excuse to say no.
Even in the depths of poverty, you can always afford 1%.
Always. It is an intervention meticulously designed to interrupt that chronic apathy we talked about earlier, but without accidentally triggering a survival panic.
So Marcus is hacking Derek's resistance.
He is hacking it. He knows that the actual dollar amount of that 1% won't make Derek rich. But the physical act of saving it, the behavioral shift from being a passive victim of circumstances to an active participant in resource management, that is the neurological spark.
It's the spark that will eventually burn the apathy down.
It forces the brain to acknowledge I have surplus, even if that surplus is just $3.
Okay, I see the brilliance in the psychological hack now. But we really have to move this theory into the brutal reality of Derek's actual situation.
Because he's still broke on a park bench.
Right. Knowing the deep neuroscience of the 1% rule is completely and utterly useless if you have zero incoming cash flow.
Very true.
Which moves us to the very foundation of this entire process. The absolute first actionable requirement in building wealth, ironically, isn't optimizing savings or analyzing expense ratios.
It's generating cash flow.
Generating cash flow and simply keeping your physical body alive.
Survival must always unequivocally precede optimization. You cannot tune the engine of a car that has no gasoline in the tank.
Derek points this exact flaw out to Marcus immediately on the bench. He says, I hear you, old man, but I just got fired an hour ago. I don't have a paycheck to take 1% from.
And Marcus is incredibly blunt here. He strips away all the poetry.
What did he say?
He says, then go get one. Anyone. It doesn't matter what it is. Stock shelves, wash dishes, drive deliveries. He tells Derek to find any source of income immediately, regardless of prestige.
Regardless of prestige. That's a huge point.
Marcus is aggressively stripping away Derek's ego. When people lose a job, especially if they have some experience, they naturally want to replace it with an equal or better position.
Oh, absolutely. They want the right title, the matching salary, the proper benefits package.
But Marcus is imparting a harsh truth. When your net worth is $41, ego is a luxury item you simply cannot afford to finance.
Ego is a luxury item. Wow.
Immediate cash flow, regardless of how menial or physically demanding the source, is the only acceptable objective.
And the reality of this phase is grueling. It isn't some quick cinematic montage where Derek hands out 2 polished resumes, gives a firm handshake, and lands a great entry-level corporate job.
No, it's a grind.
He spends the next 3 agonizing weeks applying absolutely everywhere. Cold calling warehouses, filling out endless online applications for restaurants signing up for gig work.
And getting nothing but automated rejections.
Or worse, interviews where the manager promises to call and then simply ghosts him.
Which is so demoralizing.
Meanwhile, the inescapable math of his situation is closing in like a vice. He is sitting at his kitchen table staring blankly at a bright pink late notice from his property manager.
The clock is ticking.
It is. And this is when that internal voice of doubt really flares up into a scream. He thinks, what's the point? I'm already drowning.
But he remembers Marcus.
He remembers Marcus's words. He describes the memory of that conversation rattling around in his head like a single coin in an empty jar.
That imagery, a single coin in an empty glass jar, is brilliant.
It's so evocative.
It highlights the absolute hollow emptiness of Derek's material situation, but it also perfectly captures the persistent, loud, undeniable presence of Marcus's challenge.
It was the only piece of solid, proactive advice he had to hold on to.
In an ocean of silence, rejection, and mounting panic.
So that persistent rattling kept him moving until week 4. And finally, his phone rings.
He gets a bite.
It's a call from a regional grocery store located about 6 blocks from his apartment. They offer him a night shift stocking shelves.
And the pay.
The pay is $11 an hour.
Not great.
Not great at all. But he accepts the job immediately without a second thought. And let's be entirely clear about the reality of what this job entails.
It's not easy work.
It is brutal, repetitive physical labor. He is hauling massive, heavy pallets of canned soup, bending and lifting until 2 o'clock in the morning.
His feet are swollen, his lower back is screaming.
Yes. But when he finally clocks out of that very first shift and walks out into the cool night air, he feels something profound.
Oh, what is it?
It isn't joy, it isn't triumph, it is relief.
That relief is the exact neurological sensation of agency returning to the body.
Agency.
Yes. When you are unemployed and simply watching your bank account drain dollar by dollar, you are existing in a state of total passivity.
You are just a hostage waiting for the disaster to hit.
Exactly. Hauling crates of soup until 2 in the morning is physically exhausting, yes, but it is an action.
He is actually doing something.
He is finally doing something tangible to push back against the tide of ruin. That sheer physical exertion translates directly into a psychological foothold,
He is back in the game.
even if he is at the very bottom of the scoreboard.
But then unfortunately the harsh light of reality hits again. The end of month 1 arrives. Derek gets his very first paper paycheck.
The moment of truth.
And we really have to acknowledge how popular media would portray this exact moment.
Oh yeah, in a feel-good movie, Derek would take that first check, proudly calculate his 1%, confidently walk into a grand marble bank, make his deposit, and smile at the teller.
Cue the uplifting music.
Right, but real life doesn't give a damn about cinematic pacing or narrative arcs.
Not at all. His first paycheck is for exactly $327.
And every single cent of that money is already aggressively spoken for.
The overdue rent, so he doesn't get evicted.
The final disconnection notice on the electric bill.
Gasoline for the car, so he
Yeah.
can physically keep going to work. Bare minimum groceries.
By the time he pays just what is strictly biologically necessary to keep his life from collapsing into homelessness, he has exactly $11 left.
$11. And this is a critical juncture where 99% of people just completely give up on the concept of wealth building.
They look at that pathetic $11 surplus after a week of backbreaking labor, and they say, see, the system is completely rigged, I am too far behind, the math is impossible, and Marcus's rule is a fairy tale.
So what does Derek do? He takes 8 of those remaining $11 and buys a massive cheap bag of white rice and a value pack of chicken thighs just so he won't starve over the weekend.
And his total savings for month 1.
$0.00. Nothing. He failed the rule immediately.
And here is the absolutely crucial paradigm shift for anyone listening who is in this situation.
Lay it on us.
Surviving is the first baseline requirement. Period.
Period.
Generating 0 savings in month 1 was not a failure on Derek's part. It was a highly successful, necessary stabilization maneuver.
You cannot build a long-term compounding financial future if you are sleeping in the back seat of your sedan.
Exactly. Keeping a roof over your head and preventing your utilities from being shut off is the primary directive.
It's the classic airplane safety video analogy, right?
Put your mask on first.
You have to secure your own oxygen mask before you can assist others. In this context, you have to put the oxygen mask on your present self by paying the overdue rent and keeping the lights on before you can even begin to allocate resources to help your future self.
Absolutely correct.
But I want to push you on this because it's really easy to say stabilize from a podcast studio.
Sure, it's easy to say.
How does someone actually avoid feeling completely, utterly defeated when their entire first paycheck vanishes instantly just to cover past due debts? It has to feel incredibly demoralizing.
It feels like running on a treadmill that's going backward.
Yes. So how do you not quit?
It is deeply demoralizing, but only if your internal expectation is immediate wealth accumulation.
Okay, so there's a framing issue.
If you reframe the metric of success, it changes the entire psychological landscape.
How so?
Remember the profound relief Derek felt after hauling those soup crates?
Yeah, the agency.
The momentum of having a job, the forward motion of simply moving your body and generating capital again is the actual foundation you are laying in month 1.
The money is entirely spoken for, yes.
But the habit of working, the habit of showing up, the habit of generating value is being reestablished.
You have successfully stopped the bleeding.
That is a massive, monumental victory, even if your savings account is still sitting at absolute 0.
You have to give yourself the grace to survive, before you demand that you thrive.
Well said. You are building the scaffolding. You aren't pouring the concrete yet.
Give yourself the grace to survive. I think that is a really powerful takeaway. So we have secured the baseline, the bleeding has stopped.
Now we move into month 2.
And this is where the theoretical behavioral mechanics Marcus talked about finally collide with actual execution.
This is where the exposure therapy actually begins.
So month 2 arrives. The past due bills are mostly caught up. The fridge isn't totally empty.
He's not drowning anymore.
Derek is still completely functionally broke, but he's no longer actively drowning. He gets his Friday paycheck.
$327, just like the first one.
He sits on the edge of his bed, opens his phone calculator, and does the incredibly complex math.
Let me guess, 1%.
1% of $327 is exactly $3.27.
An amount of money so profoundly insignificant in the grand macroeconomic scheme of things that it barely registers as currency.
He opens a separate free savings account. This was a very specific part of Marcus's instruction, by the way. An account completely unlinked from his daily checking and spending.
That separation is key.
And Derek transfers the $3.27. He notes that it feels absurd to him. He feels like he is playing a child's game.
But he executes the transfer anyway.
He does, and he does it again the following week, and the week after that.
And then a highly unintended but incredibly powerful side effect kicks in.
By forcing himself to go through the physical motion of making that tiny transfer, Derek is forced to start paying attention to his money.
And this is the sleight of hand. This is the magic trick Marcus knew would happen.
It's sneaky.
Very. When you are trapped in the earn-spend-repeat cycle, you are financially unconscious. Money moves through your life like water rushing through a sieve.
You don't even see it leaving.
But the exact moment Derek consciously, deliberately removed $3.27 from his primary flow of income, he forced his brain to become conscious of the flow itself.
He started noticing what we can call invisible leaks, things that used to just blend seamlessly into the background noise of his daily routine.
Like what?
Suddenly, he's on his break at the grocery store, and he realizes he's tapping his card for $1.50 at the break room vending machine every single night.
$1.50 here, $1.50 there.
He notices the $3 neon energy drinks he mindlessly grabs at the gas station on his commute 4 times a week.
They add up.
He actually looks at his bank statement and sees a $9.99 recurring streaming app subscription that he hasn't even logged into since last summer.
He is experiencing a fundamental identity shift. The psychological concept here is related to the reticular activating system, or RAS, in the brain.
Okay, let's break that down. What does the RAS do?
It's the filter that decides what information is important enough to bring to your conscious attention. Have you ever bought a new car and suddenly you see that exact car everywhere on the road?
Oh yeah, all the time.
That's your RAS at work. By actively managing that tiny 1%, he programmed his RAS to care about money.
He is transitioning from a passive consumer who just lets money happen to him into an active money manager.
The 1% rule, as it turns out, is a brilliant Trojan horse.
So the true value was never the $3.27 accumulating in the bank.
No, the true value was forcing Derek to open his eyes. Once you see the systemic leaks in your own life, you can't unsee them.
You can no longer maintain the illusion that your money is just mysteriously disappearing due to bad luck.
You realize you are an active participant in its disappearance.
Here's where it gets really interesting. By month 3, Derek looks at all these newly discovered leaks and he realizes they really add up.
So what does he do?
He bumps his savings rate up to exactly $3 a day.
$3 a day. That is roughly $90 a month.
Right. So we've jumped from saving $3 a paycheck to saving almost $100 a month. That is no longer 1%.
That is more like 7 or 8% of his take-home income.
Exactly. To elevate our analogies here, it's not just turning on a light in a messy room.
Yeah.
The initial 1% was like putting a highly fluorescent tracer dye into a complex plumbing system.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Right. Putting the dye in doesn't fix the pipes, it doesn't stop the leaks, but it illuminates in glowing colors exactly where the structural integrity of your system is failing.
He could finally see the energy drinks and the forgotten apps bleeding his system dry.
But my major question is this: how does the jump from 1% to 7 or 8% happen so incredibly fast?
It seems like a huge leap.
If saving feels so psychologically painful initially, why did scaling up to $3 a day seem almost effortless for him?
Because the initial friction was gone.
The friction.
The exposure therapy worked. This is exactly how Marcus designed the behavioral loop. 1% was never meant to be the final destination.
It was always just the on-ramp.
In behavioral psychology, the hardest part of adopting any new habit is the initiation phase.
Just getting started.
The brain aggressively resists starting because it anticipates pain deprivation and a loss of resources.
But once Derek proved to his own amygdala that he could survive without that 1%,
That he didn't starve, he wasn't evicted, the world didn't end because he saved $3, the baseline fear evaporated.
the psychological friction of starting was completely eliminated.
When he found those invisible leaks, with your tracer die analogy, redirecting that wasted money into his new savings account didn't feel like a sacrifice.
Felt like a satisfying correction.
Scaling up feels natural, almost empowering, because you are no longer fighting the initial primal panic response. You are just optimizing a system that is already successfully running.
Which moves us into a critical phase of the journey. Derek finally has positive momentum.
He's rolling.
He has a functional system. He is tracking his leaks and saving his $3 a day like clockwork.
Right.
But just as he starts building this positive inertia, he slams violently into a wall.
Oh, there's always a wall.
And it's an obstacle that almost everyone who tries to fundamentally better their station in life will eventually face.
What is it?
The crushing skepticism of their peers and the overwhelming, deafening voice of self-doubt.
Social friction is very often the silent assassin of financial plans.
The silent assassin.
We like to think of personal finance as a solitary spreadsheet exercise, but we do not operate in a vacuum.
We really don't.
Our financial habits, our spending thresholds, and our risk tolerances are deeply intertwined with our social circles and tribal affiliations.
So let's talk about the barbecue incident.
The barbecue incident.
Derek is at a weekend barbecue, and his buddy Craig, who he's known for years, finds out about this whole savings project.
Craig is about to be a problem, isn't he?
Oh yeah. Craig decides to loudly mock him in front of the entire group.
Of course he does.
He says, bro, you're stocking shelves on the night shift and saving $3 a day. That's not an investment portfolio, that's a literal piggy bank for a toddler.
Ouch.
And everyone around the grill laughs.
That laughter is incredibly toxic.
It is.
It is deliberately designed to belittle and reinforce social conformity.
The story describes the profound, isolating loneliness Derek feels in that specific moment.
I can imagine.
The deep loneliness of doing something incredibly difficult that nobody around you understands or respects.
And that external mockery immediately triggers a massive resurgence of his internal doubt.
The voice in his head comes roaring back. Craig is right. What's the point? You'll never actually catch up. The math is too slow. People who are rich started rich.
It's all the classic excuses.
That night, Derek goes home, opens his banking app on his phone, and his thumb literally hovers over the button to transfer all the money back and empty the savings account.
He is that close to quitting.
He is inches away from capitulating and giving up.
But he doesn't.
He is only stopped because in that moment, he remembers Marcus.
The old man on the bench.
He remembers the quiet, unwavering wisdom of that stranger, and he makes a conscious choice to trust Marcus's process over Craig's mockery. He leaves the money alone.
We need to analyze Craig for a moment because everyone listening has a Craig in their life.
Oh, absolutely. Craig is everywhere.
Craig's laughter is a textbook example of crab mentality.
Crab mentality. Explain that for us.
When you put a group of crabs in a bucket, if one crab makes a concerted effort to climb out and escape, the other crabs will actively reach up and pull it back down into the mass.
Wow, so they sabotage each other.
They do. Craig is likely just as functionally broke as Derek. Derek's new discipline, even at just a seemingly pathetic $3 a day, holds up a very bright, very uncomfortable mirror to Craig's own lack of discipline and agency.
So it's defensive.
By loudly mocking Derek's piggy bank, Craig is desperately protecting his own fragile ego.
Because if Derek actually succeeds, if Derek builds wealth on a grocery store salary, Craig has no more excuses for his own stagnation.
Exactly. The listener needs to be acutely prepared for the Craigs in their own life. When you shift out of a survival mindset and start making intentional delayed gratification choices, people who are still heavily invested in that survival mindset will feel existentially threatened by your progress.
But Derek pushes through that social friction. He ignores the crabs. He keeps aggressively saving his $3 a day, cutting the energy drinks, cutting the vending machine.
And it pays off.
It does. 13 months into this experiment, he hits a major psychological milestone.
The first big one.
He crosses the $1,000 mark in his dedicated savings account.
$1,000.
The narrative calls this milestone absolute rocket fuel for his confidence.
Because hitting that $1,000 proves purely mathematically that a guy with absolutely zero financial education who stocks canned goods on a night shift can literally manifest something from nothing.
And here is the fascinating unintended ripple effect. His newfound financial confidence heavily spills over into his actual job performance.
It changes how he carries himself.
His floor manager notices a distinct shift in his attitude. Derek is showing up 10 minutes early. He's not complaining about the workload. He actually seems to care about the efficiency of the warehouse.
And as a direct result of this behavioral shift, he gets moved to the highly coveted day shift and gets a $2 an hour raise. The shift from a passive survival mindset to an active growth mindset impacts absolutely every vector of your life.
It's all connected.
When Derek was at zero, when he was just waiting to be fired again, he was a completely indifferent employee because he felt entirely hopeless.
There was no connection between his effort and his outcome.
But once he saw his savings actively growing, he realized he actually possessed agency. He had direct, tangible control over his future.
And that internal psychological shift in self-worth always manifests externally as competence, reliability, and leadership.
Employers are highly attuned to that energy. The $2 raise wasn't an accident or a lucky break. It was a direct economic consequence of his vastly improved psychological state.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back on this $1,000 milestone.
Okay, push away.
Let's be brutally realistic. Is $1,000 really that life-changing? In today's macroeconomic environment, $1,000 is effectively nothing. It barely covers a single minor emergency.
That's true.
If his car's alternator blows on the highway, that $1,000 is gone in an afternoon. If he gets a minor dental infection, it's gone.
It goes fast.
If anything, doesn't having that $1,000 and then instantly losing it to an unavoidable emergency make the apathy worse?
I can see how you'd think that.
It proves that the system is entirely rigged against him. It's like going on a strict diet, losing 5 pounds, and then gaining it back over one holiday weekend. Is it really rocket fuel, or is it just precarious, fragile hope that sets him up for a harder fall?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are absolutely right that $1,000 does not represent vast, unshakable economic purchasing power.
It won't buy a house.
It will not solve a massive structural crisis.
Right.
And yes, an emergency could wipe it out tomorrow. But its value at this specific stage of the journey is not economic. Its value is entirely evidential.
Evidential, meaning it proves something.
It is undeniable, irrefutable mathematical proof of concept.
Ah, I see.
When you lose those first 5 pounds on a diet, nobody else notices, and you're still out of shape, but you know the underlying caloric deficit works.
For Derek, crossing $1,000 silenced the internal voice that said you'll never catch up.
It permanently silenced Craig's mockery. It proved that the system functioned precisely as Marcus said it would.
So even if an alternator repair wipes out the account the very next day, Derek now possesses the knowledge of how to build it back.
He knows the mechanics. That internal proof of concept is what fuels the next 2 decades of exponential growth. It is the crucial psychological bridge between chronic poverty and enduring wealth.
Wow. Okay, that distinction is profound. The money might be fragile, but the knowledge of how to generate it is anti-fragile.
Precisely.
The $1,000 is the undeniable proof of concept, which brings us to the next massive hurdle in our blueprint.
Time to level up.
Derek has savings. He has a slightly higher income from his new daytime shift and his raise. Keeping his surplus money in a basic zero-interest savings account isn't going to cut it anymore.
Inflation will slowly eat it alive.
It's time to tackle the final, most intimidating boss of financial anxiety: the stock market.
This is the exact choke point where most people get paralyzed all over again.
They successfully conquer the savings habit, they build the emergency fund, but the concept of investing feels like attempting to translate ancient Greek.
Exactly. The barrier to entry feels incredibly high. But Derek approaches it with the exact same step-by-step pragmatism he used for the 1% rule.
He just takes it slow.
He starts reading the absolute basics, and I love this detail. He specifically intentionally avoids all the money guru noise.
Oh, that is such a smart move.
He completely ignores the flashy internet personalities promising quick riches day trading algorithms or leveraged options trading.
Because that's not investing, that's gambling.
Instead, he asks fundamental structural questions. What is an index fund? What is the actual mathematical mechanic of compound interest? How do regular people, not Wall Street insiders with Bloomberg terminals, not Silicon Valley tech bros, actually grow wealth over long periods of time? And the answers he uncovers are described in such a perfect, poetic way.
They are beautifully, powerfully boring.
That phrase, beautifully, powerfully boring, should be legally required to be printed on every brokerage account application.
It really should be.
There is a massive systemic misconception that investing must be frantic, complex, intellectually exhausting, and highly stressful to be profitable.
People imagine day traders staring at 6 glowing monitors, screaming into headsets, sweating over minute-by-minute stochastic fluctuations.
That is speculation, not investing.
So Derek opens a simple, no-frills brokerage account. Nothing fancy, just a standard account at a major discount broker.
And his execution strategy is incredibly straightforward.
He starts putting $100 every single month into a broad market index fund. And his entire portfolio management philosophy is distilled into 4 words. Set it and forget it.
If we are translating this into a tangible, actionable guide for the listener right now, this is exactly the playbook.
Okay, let's break it down.
Step 1, ruthlessly ignore the noise. Ignore the crypto trends, the hot stock tips from your uncle, the complex algorithmic trading strategies.
Step 2.
Deeply understand compound interest. Compound interest is simply the concept of your capital generating a return and then that return generating its own return.
So it snowballs.
Over decades, the interest you earn starts earning its own interest, creating an exponential sweeping curve of growth. It is the beautifully boring engine of long-term wealth.
And step 3.
Utilize broad market index funds. These funds allow you to buy a microscopic slice of hundreds or thousands of the most profitable companies in the world all at once.
Which massively spreads out your risk, right?
And guarantees you capture the general upward trend of human economic progress.
So what does this all mean conceptually? Let's use an analogy to make sure we are crystal clear on why this works so well for someone like Derek.
Analogy time, let's hear it.
Instead of comparing it to a grocery store, let's look at it like investing in the infrastructure of a booming city.
Okay, I'm with you.
Trying to pick individual winning stocks is like trying to guess exactly which specific restaurant on Main Street is going to be the most popular 5 years from now.
You have to analyze their menu, their management, their supply chain.
You might get it right and make a fortune, but you will probably get it wrong because the chef quits or a pipe bursts and you lose everything.
Right, the risk is concentrated.
But buying a broad market index fund, that's like buying the toll road that leads into the city.
Ah, that's good.
You don't need to know anything about the individual restaurants. You don't care who wins or loses on Main Street. You just trust that people will continue to drive into the city to eat, work, and live, and you collect a tiny fraction of a cent from every single car that passes through.
It requires zero insider knowledge of the restaurant industry.
Not at all.
That is an exceptionally clear and accurate way to frame it. You are betting on the overall historical upward trajectory of macroeconomics and human productivity, rather than gambling on the highly volatile fate of a single corporate entity.
You own the toll road. But I want to dig into the behavioral side of this. Why is the boring aspect actually a massive psychological superpower?
Why is it better to be bored?
Yeah, why does set it and forget it consistently outperform the returns of people who are constantly monitoring, tweaking, and actively managing their portfolios?
Because boredom implies a complete lack of emotional interference.
Emotions ruin portfolios.
They absolutely do. When you adopt a set it and forget it strategy, you are fundamentally automating your success and removing human error.
You set up the automatic clearinghouse transfer of $100 a month from your checking account to your brokerage.
And then you physically step away from the keyboard.
By removing yourself from the day-to-day anxiety-inducing fluctuations of the market, you prevent your own primal fear or greed from sabotaging your long-term plan.
Exactly. When the market inevitably dips by 20%, an active emotional investor panics, the amygdala fires up again and they sell their assets at a massive loss just to feel safe.
But a bored automated investor doesn't even log in.
Their automated system just keeps blindly buying their $100 worth every month, meaning they are actually acquiring shares of global corporations at a 20% discount.
Automation completely removes the daily grinding anxiety of money management and allows the mathematical engine of compound interest to work in the background entirely uninterrupted by human panic. Okay, so we've fully established the architecture of the system.
The blueprint is complete.
We had the initial 1% start to break the apathy. We utilized the tracer die to track the leaks, and comfortably moved to saving $3 a day.
We mathematically proved the concept with the first $1,000 to silence the internal and external critics.
And now we have an automated
The timeline is the most critical part of this analysis. It is where the abstract, theoretical concept of compound interest becomes a tangible, life-altering reality.
It requires immense patience, doesn't it?
Immense patience, but the math is undeniable.
Let's walk through the specific numbers provided. At the end of year 1 of investing, Derek has roughly $1,200.
Okay, a solid start.
By year 2, he hits $2,600, and he's starting to actually see some of that exponential growth from the market returns and dividend reinvestments we talked about.
The snowball is rolling.
By year 5, his portfolio crosses over $8,000. But crucially, his external life is also dramatically shifting in parallel.
How so?
He has worked his way up to a senior shift supervisor at the grocery store. Then he leverages that management experience to get a much better job at a regional logistics company with significantly better pay and benefits.
And as his income increases, he intentionally doesn't inflate his lifestyle to match.
He inflates his savings rate, he bumps his monthly automated investment to $250 a month, and eventually to $400 a month.
Notice how his career trajectory and his risk tolerance perfectly parallel his financial trajectory.
As his savings grow, so does his professional ambition.
Moving from a familiar grocery store to a new logistics company requires confidence. It requires believing that you deserve better compensation for your acquired skills, and it requires the ability to walk away if things go wrong.
Financial confidence breeds professional leverage.
Because he is no longer operating from a place of sheer desperation, because he has that $8,000 cushion acting as a shock absorber, he can negotiate better.
He can take calculated career risks that someone living paycheck to paycheck simply cannot afford to take. And the mathematical snowball just keeps accelerating as the timeline stretches out. Fast forward to year 15, and Derek's portfolio sits at over $130,000.
Incredible.
By year 20, he passes $235,000, and the account is compounding faster than ever.
And we have to reiterate, this was not a lottery win.
No, it wasn't a sudden windfall. It was just extreme patience. The ruthless mathematics of compounding and what can only be described as the quiet stubbornness of a man who firmly refused to ever go back to having $41 in his checking account.
Quiet stubbornness is the perfect exact descriptor for enduring wealth creation.
It takes grit.
It is the absolute resolve to stick to a profoundly boring plan for 2 solid decades, completely ignoring the relentless, deafening distractions of a hyper-consumer-driven culture.
A culture that constantly demands you spend your capital to signal your status to people you don't even like. So we look at Derek today. He is 57 years old. He isn't lounging on a mega yacht in the Mediterranean.
He isn't renting Lamborghinis to post about his passive income courses on social media.
But he owns his home outright, having paid off the mortgage 3 years ahead of schedule. He has a diversified portfolio that lets him sleep incredibly soundly at night.
That's the dream.
And there is a highly specific grounded anecdote that perfectly illustrates the totality of his transformation. His car breaks down.
Oh no.
The alternator dies in the middle of a freezing winter week.
A classic, unpredictable financial emergency that would normally cause severe relationship-straining distress for the average household.
Exactly. I want to vividly contrast the 2 versions of Derek we've analyzed today.
Let's do it.
At 34 years old, staring at a simple $4 latte was a full-blown existential crisis that completely paralyzed his prefrontal cortex.
It broke him.
But at 57, a major winter car repair, likely costing several $100s, happens, and his heart rate doesn't even elevate.
He doesn't panic.
He doesn't have to call friends or family begging for a humiliating loan. He doesn't have to put it on a high-interest credit card and pray he could pay it off before the interest spirals.
He just calmly authorizes the repair, pays the mechanic in cash from his buffer account, and goes on with his Tuesday.
It is no longer a crisis. It is just a minor administrative flip. He has achieved absolute, unquestionable financial peace.
And that peace, that specific lack of anxiety, is what true functional wealth actually looks like.
It's not about flash.
The financial industry wants you to believe wealth is luxury cars and sprawling mansions. But in reality, wealth is the absence of panic when life inevitably goes wrong.
It is structural resilience.
It is the ability to dictate your own response to adversity.
So we see the end result. We see the math works flawlessly. The $235,000 proves it beyond a shadow of a
The
doubt.
numbers don't lie.
But I have to ask, If the mathematics of compound interest are this historically reliable, if the outcome is this practically guaranteed over a 20-year horizon, why is it so incredibly hard for the average person to trust the process during year 1 and year 2?
Why do they quit?
Why do so many people capitulate and quit before they ever hit year 5?
This raises an important question about human evolutionary biology and time preference.
Evolutionary biology.
Yes. We are simply not biologically wired to process long-term, invisible, abstract rewards.
We want it now.
We are wired as prehistoric hunter-gatherers to seek immediate, visible, caloric results. If you successfully hunt, you eat today. If you don't, you starve today.
The feedback loop is instant.
When Derek saves $3 in year 1, his brain does not receive an immediate dopamine hit of a massive tangible reward.
The result of that daily sacrifice is entirely invisible for years.
Trusting the process when the outcome is invisible is the single hardest part of the entire behavioral journey.
It takes so much discipline.
It requires a tremendous amount of cognitive override. You have to intellectually force your prefrontal cortex to trust the math over your amygdala's biological desire for immediate, tangible gratification.
He had to trust Marcus, essentially, until he had enough data to trust the math himself.
Yes, he borrowed Marcus's conviction.
Speaking of Marcus, the story ends with Derek returning to that exact same park bench a few years later.
Full circle.
He specifically wants to find the old man who handed him the keys to his own psychological prison. But the bench is completely empty.
He's gone.
He waits, but he never sees Marcus again. The lesson, however, stayed with him, described as being carved into his daily life like a deep groove in wood.
1% to start.
Bet a little more. Bet a little more. Not because it was exciting or flashy, but because it was undeniably mathematically real.
The absolute permanence of that habit is what ultimately built the wealth. It bypassed motivation entirely and became as natural and thoughtless to him as breathing.
As we wrap up this deep dive, let's distill the core actionable takeaway for everyone listening.
The bottom line.
The 1% rule is not a magical mathematical formula that guarantees riches on its own merit. It is a precision psychological tool.
It is about making the initial start so incredibly laughably easy that your brain literally cannot invent a valid excuse to talk you out of it.
Derek's trajectory proved that building unshakable financial security isn't about how much capital you earn at the start.
It is entirely about how often you save, how effectively you automate, and how stubbornly you maintain that habit over decades. If you are listening to this right now, whether you are trying to optimize a complex portfolio or you are just trying to stop the bleeding in your checking account, the most important behavioral truth you can take away from Derek's story is this.
You do not need a perfect, comprehensive, heavily researched plan to start.
You do not need to read 10 dense books on macroeconomic theory before you begin.
And most importantly, you absolutely do not need to wait for things in your life to finally settle down. Because as we all know, things never ever fully settle down.
Life is always happening. The chaos is constant.
You just need to start today with whatever surplus you have, even if it is only $3.27.
Just take that first tiny insignificant step, automate the process, and let the sheer brutal force of time handle the heavy lifting. It always does.
I love that. Start today. Defy the apathy. Yeah, and I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought to mull over as you go about your day.
A provocative thought.
We talked about how Derek went back to the park looking for Marcus, wanting desperately to say thank you to the man who saved him. But the bench was empty.
He never got to say thanks.
It really makes you wonder, if you implement this simple 1% rule today, if you start tracking those systemic leaks and building that beautifully boring index fund portfolio.
Who is the person in your life 10 or 20 years from now that you might end up being a Marcus for?
Whose entire generational trajectory could you permanently change just by sitting on a bench and sharing the incredibly simple, boring story of how you started?
It is a profoundly powerful legacy to leave behind.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the numbers on a screen. It's about freedom. It's about agency. So the next time you find yourself staring at a coffee shop menu, looking at the price of a latte, and feeling that familiar creeping wave of panic wash over you.
Remember, Derek.
Remember the $41? Remember that a completely different, unshakable future is just 1% away. Until next time.
So I want you to visualize a really specific but universally recognizable moment. Picture this scenario in your mind. It's like 6:55 in the morning.
Oh, early.
Super early. We are in Erie, Pennsylvania. The sun is just barely creeping over the horizon. The coffee maker on the counter hasn't even finished brewing yet. and a woman named Dana is sitting in the quiet of her kitchen.
Just kind of soaking in those last few minutes of peace.
Right, exactly. She's already dressed in her work scrubs for a really long shift at the hospital. She has her phone in her hand, the screen is casting that faint blue glow across her face in the early morning light, and she opens her banking app and she transfers exactly $50 into a secondary account.
Just 50. Not a huge amount.
Not 60, not 100, not whatever happens to be sitting there after a weekend out. Exactly $50. And she has performed this exact silent ritual every single payday for 14 months straight.
It's such a quiet, almost invisible action. It happens completely in the background of a chaotic life.
Yeah, and get this, her husband doesn't even know this is a dedicated savings account. Like, really?
Yeah. He just thinks it's like the operational account where the car insurance gets drafted from. The money just moves and the day begins.
That is fascinating.
But the detail that completely recontextualizes this entire scene is Dana's income. Dana takes home just $2,200 a month. That is her entire financial reality.
Wow. Okay, so things are tight.
Extremely tight. That is a number that, every financial guru, every glossy wealth management article, they'd all say that leaves absolutely zero room for saving.
Right, the math supposedly just does not allow for wealth accumulation at that level.
Exactly. And yet right now, today, Dana has quietly built 4 solid months of bare bones survival funds. 4 months of complete financial invincibility, just sitting quietly in that secondary account, and she is steadily marching toward a full year. She built this massive wall of security just $50 at a time.
Which, that completely defies the standard narrative we are fed about how wealth is built.
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to believe that savings are this luxury reserved only for people with massive surplus income. Yeah, like if you don't have a surplus, you're just sidelined from the whole game.
Exactly. But her story absolutely shatters that narrative.
It really does. And that brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive, because we are going to completely dismantle that traditional and frankly, often entirely useless advice about saving what's left over.
We are throwing it entirely out the window.
Completely out the window. Instead, we are going to explore the underlying mechanics and, more importantly, the psychological architecture of what we are calling the brick habit. We're looking at how adopting microscopic, automated, and relentlessly boring financial choices can quietly construct a massive wall of lifelong financial security, regardless of your income bracket.
And I want you, the listener, to think about your own financial history for a second here. Whether you are currently scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe you're actually making a very comfortable salary, but you still feel this persistent anxiety that you can never quite get ahead.
Right, that feeling of just constantly treading water.
Exactly. You have likely felt the very specific, very bitter sting of a failed savings plan. You get inspired, you set this aggressive goal, you try to just white-knuckle your way through budgeting, and then life happens.
The dog gets sick or the car needs brakes.
And the whole plan completely collapses. So the material we are analyzing today, it isn't about telling you to just go get a better paying job.
Or grind out some exhausting side hustle on your weekends.
Right, or to stop buying your morning coffee. We are looking at a fundamental psychological rewiring. It's about learning how to capture invisible money that is already seamlessly slipping through your fingers and transforming it into permanent freedom.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to fully understand how Dana built her wall of security, we first have to understand why the conventional savings mountain that everyone tells us to climb is structurally unsound. Why does it always just inevitably crumble beneath our feet?
We really need to look at the foundational flaw in mainstream financial advice.
So what is that flaw, in your view?
The foundational flaw is basically a matter of perspective and privilege. Almost every piece of popular savings advice you have ever consumed was conceptualized by someone who already enjoyed a financial surplus.
That makes so much sense.
Think about the most heavily promoted rule in personal finance, the 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your income goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings.
It sounds incredibly elegant, right? It's clean, it's symmetrical, it looks phenomenal on a corporate seminar whiteboard.
It looks wonderful in a textbook.
Uh-huh.
But for average earners who are actually navigating the real economy, it is practically useless. It operates as a luxury belief. Let's break down the reality of an average working class income today. By the time the mortgage or the rent is paid, the grocery bill is settled, the car insurance is drafted, The seasonal utility spikes are covered.
Oh, and your kid's completely unexpected but totally inevitable expenses pop up.
Exactly. By the time all that happens, 20% of what's left is a mathematical fiction.
It's a joke wearing a percentage sign.
Right. There are no leftovers.
The research we are looking at captures this environmental feeling so perfectly. The authors describe a very specific type of financial reality. It's not necessarily extreme, destitute poverty, but it is a quiet, suffocating, constant tightness.
An operational reality where every single dollar already has a job assigned to it long before it even lands in your checking account.
Yes. Every single month is this high-wire financial landing that you have to stick perfectly, or the whole month's cash flow just crashes.
And the phrase they use in the source material to describe this state is the 11.52 at night feeling.
The 11.52 at night feeling. That is so evocative. If you have lived it, you know exactly what that means.
Oh, absolutely.
You are sitting at that same kitchen table we visualized earlier. The house is finally pitch black and quiet, and you are holding a crinkled $60 field trip form from your kid's school. Or maybe it's an unexpected medical copay that nobody warned you about.
Yes, staring at it.
Staring at it, in the dark, bathed in the light of your banking app, manually moving numbers around from one subcategory to another. The author uses this brilliant metaphor. It's like trying to move heavy furniture around in a room that is already completely packed to the ceiling.
That imagery is incredibly powerful because it isolates the core issue, which is exhaustion. It's not a math problem. It's a cognitive fatigue problem. And this directly introduces a massive psychological block that keeps highly intelligent, capable people trapped in this exact cycle.
We have to look at the work of Nobel-winning economist Richard Thaler here.
Yes, he pioneered a concept in behavioral economics known as mental accounting.
Let's dive deep into mental accounting, because this just completely changes how we view our own irrational behavior. What is the actual mechanism happening in our brains here?
So the fundamental mechanism is that our brains do not possess the ability to treat our money as one giant interchangeable pool of resources. In economics, the term for interchangeable is fungible.
Fungible, okay.
A $100 bill is mathematically fungible with any other $100 bill. But psychologically, it isn't. We don't just log into our accounts and see, my holistic net worth. Instead, our subconscious mind actively sorts our money into distinct little mental boxes.
Like little sub-accounts in our head.
Exactly. We construct a rent box, a grocery box, a vacation box, an emergency box.
So just to use a concrete example, if I'm walking down the street and I find a $100 bill on the sidewalk, my brain categorizes that as free money, and I might immediately blow it on a really nice sushi dinner.
Right, because it's in the free money box.
But if I work 4 hours of grueling overtime and earn that exact same $100, my brain puts it in the hard work box, and I will probably use it to pay off a credit card.
Yes, the money is identical. The math is identical. But your brain's accounting system treats them as two completely different assets.
That is wild, but it's so true.
That is mental accounting in a nutshell. And when we apply this cognitive framework to traditional savings advice, we start to see why the advice spectacularly fails. It's because of how our brain interacts with scale and distance.
Okay, walk me through that.
Let's return to that 11.52 at night scenario. You are stressed, and you finally decide, okay, I need to get serious. I need a fully funded emergency fund of $20,000.
Very standard piece of financial advice.
Right, so your brain immediately fabricates a brand new mental box and labels it $20,000 emergency fund. But when you look at the reality of your checking account and you realize you only have a spare $300 to initiate this box, what is the psychological response?
The response is sheer defeat. I mean, the gap between the 300 you have and the 20,000 you need is so aggressively huge, it almost feels like the numbers are mocking you.
What's fascinating here is how the brain actively argues against large, distant goals. It doesn't treat them as targets to be worked toward, it treats them as logical impossibilities.
It just shuts down.
Exactly. When you look at a goal of $20,000 while holding 300, the gap dominates the entire narrative. Your brain performs a subconscious cost-benefit analysis and concludes, well, why even bother sacrificing today's comfort? We will mathematically never reach the summit.
Wow.
Big financial plans don't die because the creator lacks intelligence or because the math is intrinsically flawed. They die of the overwhelming view. They die because the mountain is simply too terrifyingly tall to even contemplate climbing on a random Tuesday morning.
And when people fail at these highly ambitious savings plans, they almost always blame their own willpower, right? They think, oh, I'm just bad with money, I lack discipline, I'm weak.
But behavioral economics proves that willpower is essentially irrelevant in this specific context. It's a complete systems failure.
So if you have started and stopped a savings plan 3 different times, the plan failed you because it demanded that you ignore the reality of how your brain biologically processes distant, abstract goals.
It demanded that you operate as a perfectly rational economic robot, rather than a tired human being experiencing the friction and stress of daily survival.
But consider the way we talk about goals culturally. I mean, if aiming high is supposed to be incredibly motivating, which is literally the thesis of every self-help book out there, right? Shoot for the moon, 10x your goals. Why does it violently backfire when it comes to saving money?
Because finance is a game of endurance, not a sprint.
To me, it's like trying to run a grueling marathon by staring intensely at the finish line 26 miles away instead of just looking at the asphalt right in front of your own feet. If you stare at the 26-mile marker while you are sweating on mile 1, the sheer distance literally crushes your spirit. Your mind cramps up and quits before your muscles even begin to ache.
That analogy perfectly captures the physiological weight of distant goals. And because staring at the entire mountain guarantees a psychological collapse, we are forced to change the unit of measurement entirely. We cannot simply try harder. We have to completely shift the focal point.
We have to stop obsessing over the wall, and we have to start obsessing over the brick. Which brings us to the core foundational philosophy that Dana used to completely change her life trajectory. And it's fascinating because this insight didn't come from some Wall Street wealth manager or behavioral economist. It came from her father-in-law, Walt.
Walt is the philosophical anchor of this entire strategy.
Oh.
Walt was a literal professional bricklayer for 41 straight years. He built foundational supports, massive commercial chimneys, entire multi-story buildings downtown.
The guy who literally built walls for a living.
Right. And one afternoon, Dana, feeling completely overwhelmed by her own financial stagnation, asked him how he stood it. How did he endure the sheer, mind-numbing endlessness of his work? Because a massive brick structure takes months, sometimes years, to finish.
It's a huge undertaking.
She asked him if it felt completely overwhelming to walk onto a muddy job site on day one, look at a massive empty dirt lot, and know he had to build a skyscraper by hand.
And Walt's response is the absolute skeleton key to this entire deep dive. He looked at her and said, "I never built a wall in my life. I laid the next brick."
I laid the next brick. It is a profound, almost Zen-like shift in perspective.
Right.
He completely decoupled his daily action from the final outcome. He didn't allow his mind to think about the wall or the building or the year-long timeline.
He just zoomed all the way in.
Exactly. His entire business, his complete mental bandwidth was restricted to just one single brick. Getting that one brick set level, getting the mortar perfectly smooth, getting it set true. And once that was done, he moved his hand to the one right after it.
Wow.
He repeated that microscopic process for 41 years, and behind him, in his wake, whole buildings are left standing. But he wasn't building the buildings, he was merely laying the brick.
He weaponized process over outcome. So Dana, sitting at home surrounded by the wreckage of her latest, highly ambitious, failed savings plan, takes Walt's philosophy and asks herself the only question that actually matters now: what is my brick?
Right, she has to define her unit.
And she decides that her new rule, her absolute unbreakable, non-negotiable law, is that $50 is the only allowed unit of measurement in her financial life. She strictly forbids herself from trying to save for a year. She forbids herself from trying to build a $20,000 emergency fund. She is just laying one single brick.
And the mechanical process of how she calculates her exact brick count is beautifully unromantic.
Yeah.
She doesn't download a fancy budgeting app. She doesn't boot up a complex Excel spreadsheet.
No color-coded graphs.
None of that. She intimately knows her own behavioral traps, and she knows that she would just waste 3 hours color-coding a spreadsheet, tweaking formulas, and ultimately trick herself into feeling a false sense of accomplishment.
Oh man, I am so guilty of that. It's productive procrastination. You organize the spreadsheet, you make the cells turn green when you hit a hypothetical goal, and you feel this massive rush of productivity, but your actual real-world bank account hasn't changed by a single cent.
Exactly, it's a total dopamine trap. So instead of falling for it, Dana just grabs a cheap, plain notebook. She ruthlessly strips her expenses down to bare absolute survival. We're talking the literal minimum required to sustain life and employment.
The absolute floor.
Rent, electricity, basic groceries, car insurance, gas to get to the hospital, and a basic phone bill. That is it. No streaming subscriptions, no eating out, no buffer, no breathing room. She calculates that it costs her exactly $1,400 a month to survive in this bare bones state.
Just to keep the lights from being shut off and her heart beating.
Exactly that. So taking that $1,400 monthly baseline, it means a full 12 months of bare survival equals $16,800.
Okay.
She takes that massive, terrifying annual survival number, $16,800, and she divides it by her chosen brick, which is $50. The resulting math is 336.
336 bricks.
She needs 336 individual bricks to purchase a full year of financial invincibility.
And the next step she takes is, in my opinion, the most brilliant psychological maneuver in the entire story. She takes a standard yellow sticky note, she writes the number 336 on it with a Sharpie, and she hides it inside a kitchen cabinet all the way in the back behind her heavy mixing bowls.
Yes.
And from that day forward, she never looks at it again.
That specific detail, the act of hiding of the sticky note, is masterful. It demonstrates a deep understanding of her own cognitive vulnerabilities.
But let's dissect why that works. Because intuitively, you would assume you'd want to tape that sticky note to the bathroom mirror to stay motivated, right? Like to see the goal every day.
Doing that would completely violate Walt's philosophy. Because looking at the number 336 when you are currently celebrating laying brick number 2 instantly resurrects the memory.
Oh, I see.
It reintroduces the overwhelming gap into your daily psychology. By hiding the sticky note behind the mixing bowls, its job is simply to exist as an anchor in reality. Its job is not to be a daily motivator.
It's just a done deal.
Exactly. It represents a completed, finalized calculation, which means her brain is officially relieved of the duty of constantly recalculating her progress. It entirely removes the crushing emotional weight of tracking a massive, distant number. The wall is handled, the blueprints are filed away. Now her singular focus is restricted entirely to the brick.
That is so smart. And to guarantee that the brick actually gets laid, to ensure the system doesn't rely on her waking up feeling inspired, she implements the ultimate willpower bypass total automation.
Automation is the linchpin here. She configures her banking system so that the $50 transfer triggers every other Friday at precisely 6:50 a.m.
It doesn't consult her, it doesn't analyze her mood, it doesn't check to see if she had a brutal 12-hour shift at the hospital the day before. It doesn't care if she's cranky or exhausted or feeling highly motivated after listening to a deep dive.
Right, it just executes.
The author describes it perfectly. It happens the way the sun comes up. It is a law of nature in her financial ecosystem.
This is critical because behavioral psychology tells us that willpower is not a personality trait. It is a depleting metabolic resource. It's called ego depletion.
Ego depletion.
Yes. Every decision you make throughout the day drains your capacity to make a good decision later. If Dana forces herself to manually log in and consciously choose to sacrifice $50 every 2 weeks, she is forcing her brain to endure the pain of loss over and over again.
Right, every single time she has to choose to give it up.
But by automating it at 6:50 a.m., before she's even poured her coffee, the agonizing choice has already been made and executed by her past self. She never even has the opportunity to grieve the loss of the money.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of anyone listening who is running the math in their head. Isn't $50 just, well, too small to matter? If you are ultimately aiming for a $16,000 survival wall, $50 feels like trying to empty the ocean with
a teaspoon.
Yes, exactly. You are standing on the shoreline of a massive crisis with a tiny plastic spoon just scooping water. How can any normal human being possibly maintain motivation when the tangible progress is practically microscopic? It feels like a strategy that would take 3 lifetimes to complete.
That skepticism is entirely valid. It is mathematically sound on a short timeline, and it is the exact reason 99% of people quit. The slowness is not just boring. It is actively agonizing, and that transitions us directly into what is undeniably the hardest phase of the brick habit.
Right, because the hardest part isn't doing the math or setting up the automation.
No, the hardest part is surviving the devastating, soul-crushing slowness of the early months and completely resisting the overwhelming psychological urge to aggressively speed things up.
Let's analyze the gritty, unglamorous reality of month 4. The research paints a very vivid, almost painful picture of this specific milestone. It's month 4, Dana has been flawless. She has done everything right.
She has missed a single beat.
She's been laying her automated bricks perfectly without a single missed payday. She opens the app one morning just to take a quick look at her empire, and she sees a grand total of $200.
4 months of unyielding discipline, 4 months of saying no to small luxuries, 4 months of sacrifice, and the ultimate reward is a balance of $200. It is deeply, fundamentally underwhelming.
The author notes a profound psychological truth here. Seeing how slow it is feels exactly like it isn't working. When progress is that incremental, the human brain misinterprets slowness as failure.
And this is precisely where Saylor's mental accounting trap tries to pull you back into the cycle of poverty. Your brain looks at that $200 and says, what is the point of this? $200 won't even cover a tow truck and a blown tire. This is entirely pointless. You've suffered for 4 months for nothing. You might as well just withdraw it and take the family out for a nice dinner.
Wow, yeah, the rationalization is so strong.
The true monumental victory of month 4 isn't mathematically reaching $200. The victory is the psychological fortitude required to close the app, resist the urge to cancel the automated transfer, and let the next boring Friday come anyway. It is the endurance of boredom.
And it's not just internal boredom that threatens the structural integrity of the plan. Life actively tries to throw wrenches into the gears. We see this in month 6. There's a glitch.
Oh, the bank glitch?
Right. The automated transfer fails because her primary checking account happens to be exactly $4 short that specific morning. Some automatic utility bill cleared a few hours earlier than expected, and the bank software just quietly skipped the savings transfer to prevent an overdraft. And Dana doesn't even notice the failure for 11 days.
Now think about how the average well-intentioned person reacts to this kind of disruption. When a strict diet is broken or a Duolingo streak is lost, the psychological response is heavily documented. It's known as the what the hell effect.
The what the hell effect?
Yeah. Well, I missed a day, the perfect streak is ruined, the entire plan is tainted, I might as well just eat the entire pizza and give up.
It's so true. We view our plans as fragile glass objects. If it cracks even a little bit, it's garbage. It has to be perfect or it's useless.
But because Dana is operating strictly under Walt's brick philosophy, her reaction is entirely different and frankly, superhuman. She logs in, realizes the transfer failed 11 days ago. She doesn't spiral into self-loathing. She doesn't panic.
She just fixes it.
She just manually moves the $50 that afternoon, verifies the automation is reset for the next cycle, and goes back to her life. Because according to the logic of the bricklayer, a brick is still a brick, even if it gets laid 11 days late. The wall does not care about your flawless streak. The wall only cares about the accumulation of material.
That reframing is so deeply powerful, it makes the system resilient instead of fragile. Which brings us to a concept that might be the single most important and simultaneously the most deeply counterintuitive rule in this entire financial strategy. The author calls it the ceiling.
The ceiling rule is a masterclass in behavioral management. The rule states this: you are never allowed to make a savings decision bigger than your designated brick.
Okay, wait.
For Dana, that means she is legally barred from saving more than $50 out of any paycheck, ever. Not even on a fantastic month. Not even when she picks up extra shifts and feels incredibly wealthy and motivated. She is hard capped at $50.
Which, on the surface, sounds financially negligent. I mean, if you have an extra $200 floating around 1 month, why on earth wouldn't you put it all in the savings account to speed up this agonizingly slow process?
Because of the tragic, highly relatable story of her coworker, Renee.
Right, Renee.
Renee serves as the perfect psychological foil to Dana in this case study. They make the exact same salary, they work the exact same shifts at the hospital, they discuss their financial anxieties in the break room, and they both independently decide to start saving during the exact same week. But Renee doesn't adopt the brick habit. She does what the internet gurus tell her to do.
She goes big.
She picks an impressive, respectable, aggressive number. She aims for $500 a month.
A massive, highly ambitious goal for a $2,200 income.
Yes, and she succeeds. For 2 whole months, she white-knuckles her budget, she grinds it out, and she manages to save an impressive $1,000.
Okay, so it works at first.
But in month 3, reality strikes. Her overtime hours at the hospital get drastically cut. She mathematically cannot make the $500 transfer without defaulting on her rent. Suddenly, she is behind. In month 4, her brain tells her that to catch up to her aggressive plan, she now needs to find $1,000 of surplus cash.
And the math just laughs in her face.
The math is unforgiving. The gap between her current reality and her stated goal becomes a mountain again. And what does Renee do? She quietly quits. She doesn't make a grand announcement, she just stops trying. The research notes she attempts to restart this aggressive plan and fails twice more over the subsequent 12 months.
But consider the irony here. The exact same ambition that fueled Renee to save $500 in a perfect month is the exact same ambition that caused her to completely abandon the project in a bad month. Her plan was incredibly fragile because it required ideal, friction-free conditions to survive.
While Dana's plan, on the other hand, was engineered specifically to survive reality.
Precisely. The ceiling rule forcefully mandates that the habit remains boring. If you cap your ambition at $50, you deny yourself that massive dopamine adrenaline rush of making a huge heroic deposit. But in exchange, you completely eliminate the despair and shame of missing one.
Boring is the ultimate objective, because boring survives the chaos of life.
So the ceiling isn't a limitation on your wealth, it's a psychological shield. It is a shield actively protecting the integrity of the habit from your own temporary good moods. Because your good moods are incredibly dangerous, they casually make promises that your bad moods cannot possibly keep.
Think about your own behavioral patterns for a second. How many times have you architected a goal based entirely on your fantasy best-case scenario self? The idealized version of you that wakes up flawlessly at 5 a.m., meal preps organically every Sunday, works out daily, and experiences zero unexpected expenses.
Never happens.
Right. Rather than building a resilient system that can actually survive your absolute worst, lowest energy Tuesday when you are exhausted, financially strapped, and everything is going wrong.
The fantasy self always writes checks that the reality self bounces. But implementing a strict ceiling leads to an obvious, glaring mathematical problem. If you are strictly capped at $50 per paycheck, how does the account ever actually grow into anything substantial enough to offer real protection?
Right, the timeline issue.
If you do the math, at $100 a month, it will take Dana exactly 14 years to hit that $16,000 survival number. That is objectively too slow for a functional emergency fund.
It is entirely too slow if you only rely on the standard bi-weekly paycheck bricks. But the true compounding magic of this system happens when you learn how to weaponize the money that suddenly, unexpectedly frees up in the background of your life.
Okay, this is where we introduce the mechanical engines of growth, the conversion rule, and the windfall rule. Let's dissect the conversion rule first. The author provides a perfect, highly relatable example. Dana has been renting an $89 a month storage unit on the edge of town.
Classic.
Right. She has been passively paying for it for 2 years, and she realizes she hasn't even opened the rolling metal door to it in over 12 months.
We all possess one of these financial leaks. A premium gym membership we never use, a specialized streaming service, a monthly subscription box. It operates as an ambient, invisible drain on our core resources.
So she finally gets fed up, drives over there, empties it, and cancels the contract on a Tuesday during her lunch break. Now, normally, under standard human behavior, when we cancel a recurring bill like that, what happens to that newly freed $89?
It just gets effortlessly absorbed back into the checking account ecosystem. We don't feel a single degree richer.
Right, the money just evaporates into slightly more expensive groceries or an extra dinner out or a nicer bottle of wine.
But under the strict doctrine of the conversion rule, the exact moment the cash flow is liberated, it instantly converts into bricks. Dana sets up an automatic recurring transfer for that specific $89 on the same day every single month. It never touches her checking account's usable balance.
Wow, just completely rerouted.
The $50 payday brick acts as the steady, unbreakable heartbeat of the system, but these conversions are where the actual accelerated growth happens.
And then there's the 24-hour windfall rule, which I think is a stroke of absolute behavioral genius. Springtime rolls around, and Dana receives a tax refund of $1,140.
A nice chunk of change.
Now, let's bring behavioral economics back into the conversation. Why is a tax refund or any lump sum of cash so inherently dangerous to a long-term savings plan?
Because of the mental accounting phenomena we discussed earlier, Thaler's extensive research demonstrates that windfall money, which is any money that appears out of nowhere outside of your normal wage structure, like a tax refund, a holiday bonus, or a birthday check, behaves completely differently in the human brain than money you extracted hour by hour through hard labor at your job.
It doesn't feel like real money. It feels disconnected from your sweat.
Exactly. It feels like casino chips or Monopoly money. Your brain instantly and aggressively sorts it into the fun account or the treat yourself account. Empirical research shows that windfall money evaporates at roughly twice the speed of a regular paycheck.
Double the speed, wow.
You will happily spend $1,000 of windfall money on a new flat-screen TV without a second thought, but you would agonize for weeks over spending $1,000 of your hard-earned hospital wages on that exact same TV. The source of the money dictates its perceived value.
So Dana is highly self-aware. She knows her brain is going to immediately try and trick her into squandering this refund. So she institutes a strict 24-hour rule. She has exactly 24 hours from the moment the deposit clears to mathematically convert that entire windfall into bricks.
Not a minute longer.
Within a day of that refund landing in her account, she divides it by 50 and it instantly transforms into 22 bricks. Counted, transferred, and gone.
Gone from temptation's reach before her brain even has the required time to start negotiating with her about maybe taking a well-deserved weekend trip or finally upgrading her cracked smartphone.
I picture it like catching a highly perishable fish. If you leave the fish sitting on the hot wooden dock, which is your checking account, it spoils rapidly. It rots.
That's a great way to put it.
Your brain immediately starts negotiating ways to consume it. Oh, I could just use a little bit for these shoes, a little bit for that dinner. You have to take that fish and throw it into the ice cooler, the brick account, immediately, before your brain really even registers that the fish was sitting there on the dock.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. You are aggressively bypassing the negotiation phase entirely. And she ruthlessly applies this rule to everything. She covers an awful weekend double shift for a sick coworker. She does the math, it's 2 bricks.
An unexpected car insurance refund check for $50.39 arrives in the mail. That equals 1 brick, and she amusingly leaves the remaining 39 cents in her checking account just to satisfy the rule perfectly.
I love that.
This is how a strictly boring, agonizingly slow $50 habit suddenly accelerates and starts moving at $400 or $500 a month. It's not because she magically tapped into a hidden reservoir of willpower. It's because she architected a mechanical set of rules that completely eliminated the need for willpower.
But eventually, every theoretical system gets violently tested by reality.
Always. In month 11, life happens. Dana's car transmission starts making that sound. The terrifying metallic grinding sound.
Oh no.
She takes it into the shop, and the mechanic hands her a bill for a $610 repair.
We need to contextualize what this moment means. For the old version of Dana, a $600 sudden unexpected expense would have been an unmitigated catastrophe. It would have triggered a cascade of awful choices, high-interest credit card debt, strategically skipping the electric bill, or another frantic 11:52 p.m. panic session at the kitchen table trying to move empty boxes around.
But because of the silent wall she has been steadily building in the background, what actually happens in this moment? Nothing. Absolutely nothing happens.
She calmly pays the mechanic with her debit card. She drives her repaired car home. And as the author beautifully details, it isn't until she is physically pulling into her own driveway, putting the car in park, that the realization washes over her.
She realizes what didn't happen.
There was no physiological stress response, there was no elevated heart rate, there was no spiral. 12.5 bricks simply came off the wall, and the wall seamlessly absorbed the impact.
She tells her sister later that it was the most expensive, profoundly boring afternoon of her entire year.
And we really need to pause and deeply analyze that profound psychological shift. The true product of quiet, automated saving, the actual ultimate victory, isn't eventually hitting that distant $16,000 numerical goal. The true product is the boringness of a crisis.
Yes.
It is the superpower of turning a devastating emergency into a minor administrative inconvenience. The immense peace of mind that comes from knowing a blown transmission is just a math equation rather than a life-altering tragedy.
It's an incredible transformation, and by month 13, we witness the ultimate proof that her psychological rewiring is permanent. Dana opens the app right before bed, and her total balance sits at $4,963. Now, she just happened to have an extra $37 sitting loose in her checking account from a recent shift.
Let's analyze the temptation here. What would the old outcome-focused version of Dana have done in this exact scenario?
Old Dana would have desperately craved the satisfaction of a round number. She would have immediately transferred that $37 just so the screen would display a beautiful, aesthetically clean $5,000.
Because the human brain is deeply addicted to round numbers and milestones. Reaching 5,000 feels like a massive achievement. It triggers a significant dopamine release.
But the new Dana, the bricklayer, looks at the $4,963 and she just closes the app. She goes to sleep.
She doesn't need the hit.
The system no longer requires her motivation or her artificial dopamine hits to function properly. The ceiling rule holds firm. She isn't allowed to move the $37 just for vanity. Furthermore, during that exact same month, she opens her monthly statement and discovers that she earned $56 in pure interest.
The wall is now autonomously laying its own bricks.
She literally laughs out loud in her kitchen. She didn't have to work a grueling shift for that $56. She didn't have to meticulously cut coupons. The money just quietly materialized out of thin air overnight, because that is what capital inherently does when you give it time and discipline.
This is the exact inflection point where the entire dynamic shifts. The money is no longer just a static, defensive pile of bricks sitting in a vault. It is slowly becoming an active, wealth-generating participant in her financial life.
So we've exhaustively explored how Dana's $50 payday habit creates a massive, tangible safety wall over the course of a single year. But the second set of data we are analyzing today takes this exact same underlying philosophy, the brick habit, the quiet automation, the radical emotional detachment, and pushes it to an absolute mathematical extreme.
Right, scaling it up by scaling it down.
What happens if we shrink the size of the brick even smaller, down to a daily, seemingly insignificant $5 choice? And what if we stretch the timeline of observation not over 12 months, but over 4 solid decades?
This is where we transition from the realm of basic survival and emergency funds, and we enter the territory of generational wealth building. And it begins with a scenario that is so mundane, so universally ordinary, it almost hurts to analyze.
Put yourself in this exact scenario. You are 25 years old at a 6.4 euro PM on a random, forgettable Tuesday evening. You are standing at the linoleum counter of a local convenience store.
We've all been there.
You have a crisp $5 bill in your hand. You purchase a sweating can of energy drink and a cheap scratch-off lottery ticket. You walk out to your car. You aggressively scratch the ticket in the parking lot with a dull quarter from your cup holder. It's a loser, as they almost always are.
Naturally.
You toss the worthless silver shavings and the ticket onto the passenger seat with the empty energy drink can. You drive home, and by the time you wake up tomorrow morning, you will have completely, permanently forgotten this minor event ever occurred.
It is the absolute definition of a disposable, friction-free experience.
And the research identifies a fundamental, almost terrifying truth about our modern consumer economy. $5 is the exact, precise amount of money that effortlessly vanishes from our lives without leaving a single psychological mark.
It is the price we happily pay to avoid having to make a conscious decision. We do not line item budget for $5 purchases. We do not track them in spreadsheets. It just silently slips through the cracks of our daily existence.
But let's rewind the tape. Let's look at the alternate reality, the sliding door moment of wealth creation.
Okay, let's hear it.
The next evening, you are parked at that exact same convenience store. But this time, you walk out of the automatic doors with absolutely nothing in your hands. You sit down in the driver's seat, you open an investing app on your phone, and you route that exact same $5 into an index fund. A fund that systematically buys a microscopic sliver of the entire global stock market.
Just $5.
And you configure it to automate this $5 transfer every single day. $152 a month simply vanishes from your checking account into an impenetrable vault that you cannot touch.
Now, we must highlight the emotional reality of this micro-investment strategy for a 25-year-old. It feels deeply absurd. When you log in and look at a balance of $5 invested in the vast expanse of the global stock market, you feel slightly foolish.
Oh, for sure.
It looks like a child's piggy bank masquerading as a portfolio. There is absolutely no thrill. There's no adrenaline spike, no dopamine hit of scratching a silver coating to see if you magically won $1 million.
It feels exactly like walking into a massive, empty, 1,000-acre dirt field, planting one single apple seed, and proudly calling yourself a farmer.
Exactly.
It feels ridiculous. But think about the underlying logic here. You, the listener, need to realize the bizarre part of this story isn't that you were choosing to save $5 a day. The truly strange part is that the $5 was guaranteed to disappear from your life either way.
Yes. Whether you consume the energy drink or purchase the index fund, that capital was leaving your ecosystem. You simply rerouted its final destination.
You took capital that was inherently destined for a landfill, and you permanently routed it into an appreciating asset. So what does this ultimately mean for your life? It means you are consciously trading a completely forgettable, fleeting, momentary pleasure for an invisible, slow-growing seed.
But as we established earlier, planting a seed is agonizingly slow. And over the course of the next 4 decades, the world, your peers, and the media are going to relentlessly attempt to convince you that your slow, boring strategy is designed for cowards and fools.
This brings us to the ultimate gauntlet of the 40-year timeline. We need to examine the psychology of surviving the ambient noise, the social mockery, and the mathematically inevitable market crashes.
Let's walk through the decades sequentially.
Let's do it. You are now age 26. You have been executing the $5 daily habit flawlessly for 1 full year. You open the app to check your progress. You have roughly $1,900. You personally contributed $1,825 of your own capital, and the stock market rewarded you with a meager $75 in growth.
$75 for an entire year of unwavering discipline. It is almost insulting to the human ego.
It really is. And you happen to mention this grand achievement to a coworker in the break room, and he actually laughs in your face. He casually remarks, "I make $75 in a single afternoon of time and a half overtime."
Ouch.
And technically, mathematically, he is absolutely correct. But here is the massive invisible catch. He routinely spends $5 a day on scattered, tiny, disposable pleasures. A premium iced coffee here, a vending machine snack there, a daily scratch ticket. Things he will literally never be able to name or recall.
So true.
The crucial difference between you and him isn't the $75 profit. The difference is the invisible, automated infrastructure you are building.
He is focused entirely on the visible outcome, the trivial $75. You are focused on the underlying process, the relentless mechanism of capturing the vanishing $5 before it evaporates.
Now we fast forward to age 30. You are 5 years into the journey. Your balance is hovering around $11,000. You've injected roughly $9,000 of your own cash, and the rest is compounded growth.
Getting better.
But one evening, a friend texts you a frantic screenshot. He gambled $2,000 on some obscure, highly volatile crypto coin, and it skyrocketed 400% in a single week.
Oh boy, here we go.
He calls you on the phone, calls you a coward, and actively mocks your boring, slow-moving index fund.
And this specific interaction is where emotional detachment becomes absolutely critical for long-term survival. Your friend is committing a classic cognitive error. He's mistaking velocity for direction.
Velocity for direction.
The seductive promise that a small amount of money can magically transform into a massive amount of wealth instantly, requiring zero time or patience, is a very ancient, very dangerous promise. As the research acutely points out, depending on where you grew up, that promise is usually just called a scratch ticket.
Yes. The crypto friend is functionally treating the global stock market exactly like that cheap scratch ticket from the convenience store. He's demanding instant unearned wealth with zero patience required.
But the reality check comes 3 months later when his highly speculative kind plummets 90% in value and he suddenly stops bringing it up at parties.
Funny that happens.
You, meanwhile, just keep your head down, adhering to the mantra of being early to bed and slow to rich.
But the true existential test of your system isn't watching a friend temporarily get rich quickly. The ultimate test arrives at age 35. You are exactly 10 years in. You have patiently built this balance up to a highly respectable $27,800. You are genuinely proud of the wall you've built.
It's a real wall now.
And then the macroeconomic environment shifts and the market violently crashes. A real, terrifying 2008-style crash. Every news network is screaming about the imminent collapse of the global economy, red arrows everywhere.
Complete panic.
You watch in horror as you lose a full third of your portfolio's value in a matter of weeks. You watch almost $10,000, which is significantly more money than you earn in an entire year at your day job, just evaporate on paper.
It's sickening.
And that same friend who panic sold all his remaining investments at the absolute bottom of the crash calls you and smugly tells you he is safe in cash and aggressively urges you to sell everything before it goes to zero.
Now let's heavily analyze your prescribed reaction to this crash. What is the optimal move? You simply do not open the app. You do absolutely nothing. You let the automated $152 transfer continue to purchase shares of the index fund every single month while the entire market is heavily discounted.
But wait, walk me through the actual mechanics of why doing nothing is the right move. If you just watched a third of your net worth vaporize, how is doing nothing mathematically advantageous?
This is where we need to clearly explain the mechanism of dollar cost averaging.
Lay it on us.
When the market crashes, the underlying value of the index fund drops. This means the shares are essentially on clearance sale. Your automated $152, which previously bought, say, 1 share a month, is suddenly buying 2 or 3 shares a month because the price has plummeted.
So you're getting more for your money.
You are accumulating assets at a massive discount without altering your budget. When the market inevitably recovers, which historically it always has, you now own significantly more shares than you did before the crash, and your wealth skyrockets exponentially.
You aren't being exceptionally brave. You are just bored enough and detached enough to let the math work in your favor.
That is a massive paradigm shift. Doing absolutely nothing during a financial panic is arguably the rarest, most lucrative, and most difficult skill in all of personal finance. Human biology violently dictates that we flee from danger. When the market bleeds, your amygdala screams at you to sell, to stop the hemorrhage, to seek safety and cash.
But the boring, emotionally detached investor is actively playing the role of the casino itself.
I love this analogy.
Think about the dynamics of a casino. The gambler at the table is sweating profusely, heart racing, riding the euphoric highs and the crushing lows, panicking when they lose a big hand. But the casino is profoundly bored.
The casino just blindly trusts the mathematical probability.
Right. The casino knows that if they just keep calmly dealing the cards, the sheer relentless volume of hands played over time absolutely guarantees their victory. The house always wins because the house is infinitely patient and completely devoid of emotion.
So if we connect this to the overarching theme of the deep dive, emotional detachment isn't just a clever psychological trick for saving money. It is a vital defensive shield.
It protects you from yourself.
Exactly. It is about aggressively protecting your wealth from your own biological panic response. If you meddle with the system, if you try to outsmart the market by jumping in and out based on headlines, you permanently disrupt the compounding process.
And the ultimate reward for this relentless, decades-long boredom, this stubborn refusal to panic, finally arrives quietly in middle age. This is where we enter the phase known as the compound tipping point. This is the exact moment when the mathematical physics of your money completely invert and the capital starts outworking your labor.
Let's examine age 40. You are 15 grueling years into the habit. Your balance sits at roughly $52,600, and a highly critical, almost magical mathematical threshold is crossed right here. For the very first time in your life, the account holds more money generated purely by compound growth than you ever personally fed into it out of your own pocket.
That's incredible.
The author describes this phase with a beautiful analogy. Up until this point, you're straining to push a massive heavy stone uphill, $5 at a time, and the hill barely seemed to move. But now you have crested the peak. The stone is rolling on its own momentum down the other side of the mountain, picking up speed, and your only remaining job is to simply not stand in front of it and impede its progress.
And the tangible, real-world application of this invisible wealth happens that exact same year. A coworker at your company gets abruptly laid off with absolutely zero financial cushion. He is immediately staring down the terrifying barrel of missed mortgage payments and potential ruin.
It's a terrifying place to be.
And you realize, quietly looking at your $52,000 balance, that the mundane $5 daily habit wasn't just about securing a far-off, hypothetical retirement at age 65. It was a concrete wall between you and absolute panic today. It is quiet savings creating massive present-day freedom for an utterly average earner.
By age 50, your balance swells to $144,000. And this is the era where you start consuming the daily news headlines with a completely different lens. You see all these panicked stories screaming about how ordinary middle-class earners simply cannot afford to retire, how the entire economic system is fundamentally broken.
But you are the definition of an ordinary earner. You sat in the exact same rush hour traffic, paid the exact same exorbitant rent, and worked the exact same average job as the people quoted in those articles. You possess $144,000 simply because you strategically skipped a cold energy drink and a piece of scratch-off cardboard for 25 consecutive years.
Then comes age 55, 30 years in. You hit $226,000, and this is where the math permanently and aggressively flips. The account now generates more pure profit in a single strong year in the market just from the sheer massive size of its own compound interest than you could possibly add by hand, even if you manage to double your monthly contributions.
You are no longer the primary engine of your wealth creation. You are merely a passenger to your own balance.
It operates exactly like raising a child. Think about the trajectory of parenthood. For years, decades even, you meticulously feed this child, you protect it, you pour immense resources, money, and time into it, and realistically, it gives you absolutely nothing back financially.
It just relentlessly consumes.
But one day, that child matures, goes out into the economy, secures a high-paying career, and suddenly, They are the ones capable of taking care of you.
That is the literal definition of compounding interest. You painstakingly raised a financial child $5 at a time, and now it is strong enough to carry you.
And finally, we arrive at the finish line, age 65, 40 full years after that forgettable evening at the convenience store. Let's look at the final staggering tally. Your balance is roughly $531,000.
Over $500,000 in liquid capital.
But the internal breakdown of that final number is the absolute crux of the entire lesson. Over 40 years, you personally contributed a grand total of just $73,000 out of your own wages.
Exactly $5 a day, which means the remaining $458,000 is pure, unadulterated compounding growth.
Think about that.
That is $500,000 that you never worked a single hour for. You didn't get incredibly lucky. You didn't have inside information on a hot tech stock. You didn't time the market perfectly. You just relentlessly allowed the smallest possible amount of money to sit in the most boring possible vehicle for the longest possible duration.
There is no hidden second secret. The agonizing slowness was the required price of admission.
And the tragedy is that almost nobody is willing to pay an admission price in a currency that takes 40 years to fully clear. Which is exactly why we need to revisit the coworker. The guy who openly laughed at your pathetic $75 profit when you were both 26.
Oh, right, him.
He hit retirement age the exact same year as you. He maintained the same job, earned the exact same lifetime salary as you.
And if you run the math over those 40 years, his impulsive version of the $5 a day also sequentially added up to $73,000. He spent the exact same amount of money you did.
But he drank his capital, he scratched his capital away with a coin, he ate his capital at fast food drive-thrus, he carelessly tossed his capital onto the passenger seat of his car to be thrown in the trash.
And what does he genuinely possess at retirement? He has a standard pension, maybe a meager Social Security check, and a lifetime composed of tiny, completely forgotten comforts.
But you likely enjoyed those exact same tiny comforts on occasion, but because you captured the vanishing $5, you also have $500,000 sitting silently behind you like an armed bodyguard.
Two completely different answers to the exact same tiny daily question asked again and again until those microscopic answers compounded into two entirely different lives. The ultimate trap of the $5 is that it is inherently too small to feel like it matters in the present moment. But that is exactly why it quietly dictates everything over the span of a lifetime.
Let's synthesize everything we've covered today. We began by completely dismantling the toxic, privileged myth of saving what's left, acknowledging that for the average earner, the concept of leftovers is a mathematical illusion. We learned from a working-class bricklayer named Walt how to systematically stop staring at the impossible, paralyzing mountain of a fully funded account.
And instead restrict our entire mental focus to flawlessly laying one $50 brick at a time.
We thoroughly explored the absolute psychological necessity of the ceiling rule, intentionally capping your ambition to fiercely protect your nascent habit from your own emotional volatility and fluctuating motivation. We saw exactly how capturing hidden money and instantly converting windfalls can rapidly turbocharge an otherwise boring, slow-moving habit.
And finally, we witnessed the undeniable, staggering math of how a mundane daily $5 choice, completely stripped of emotion and left alone to compound over decades, mathematically transforms into $500,000 of silent, unshakable freedom.
It all distills down to small, boring, emotionless consistency. So, we have a highly specific challenge for you, a concrete call to action before you listen to anything else. We want you to discover your real number.
Not the fantasy, hyper-restrictive budget where you never experience joy.
Right. Calculate your absolute bare-bones survival costs for one single year. Rent, utilities, baseline calories, and insurance. Take that massive annual number and divide it by 50.
That resulting number is your precise brick count.
I want you to physically write that number of bricks on a sticky note tonight. Do not tape it to your refrigerator. Hide it deep in a cabinet behind the heavy mixing bowls where you will not be forced to stare at the mountain every day. And then, before your head hits the pillow tonight, log into your bank and set up the automated transfer for your very first brick. Just turn the machine on.
Think about your own financial behavior over the past week for a second. Consider the $5 or the $10 or the $50 that seamlessly, almost magically slipped out of your possession this week. The money that just vanished into the ether of convenience.
If someone forced you to sit down and review a cumulative, itemized receipt of every single tiny vanishing decision you have made over the last decade, you would likely experience a profound, shocking realization.
You'd see it all right there in front of you.
You would clearly realize that you do not actually lack discipline. You are not inherently bad with money. You are, in fact, already a master builder. You are already an absolute expert at constructing massive multi-thousand-dollar walls through the power of small daily repetition. The only question you have to seriously ask yourself tonight is this: whose wall have you been building? So let's start by picturing a scene. You're standing at a convenience store counter. It's maybe 6:40 p.m.
Oh, the classic after-work slump.
Exactly. The fluorescent lights overhead are just buzzing. You're physically and mentally exhausted from a long Tuesday at work. In your left hand, you've got a sweating, brightly colored energy drink. And in your right hand, you have a crisp $5 bill.
Right.
The cashier, who, hasn't made eye contact with you once, just casually slides this brightly colored scratch-off ticket right across the counter, right next to the scanner.
We have all been there. It is such a universally recognizable moment.
Yeah, and in this exact moment, you are about to make a microscopic financial decision that it feels completely meaningless, right?
Totally meaningless.
You buy the ticket, you walk out to your car, you sit in the driver's seat, dig a quarter out of the cup holder, and scratch it. And of course, it's a loser. So you toss it onto the passenger seat next to some empty wrappers, crack open that energy drink, and pull out of the parking lot. By tomorrow morning, you will have entirely forgotten that this moment even occurred.
It completely vanishes.
Yeah.
And, that scenario is so powerful because it highlights a massive blind spot in human psychology. $5 is the exact amount of money that, it doesn't trigger our internal alarm bells.
Yeah, it's like under the radar.
Exactly. If you lost $50 on the street, it would ruin your week. If you spent $20 on a bad lunch, you'd be complaining about it to a coworker all afternoon. But $5, it is just small enough to slip right through the cracks of our cognitive accounting.
And that is exactly what we are deconstructing today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are tracking a single, really profound premise based on a scenario mapped out by the YouTube channel Sunny Finance in a video titled "Your Life If You Invested $5 a Day."
It's a great source. Really lays it out.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And just to be clear, our mission today, we are not going to talk about get-rich-quick schemes or, aggressive day trading or building some massive real estate empire.
Right, no crypto day trading here.
None of that. We're going to look at that exact moment at 6:40 p.m., and we are going to track two parallel lives over a 40-year timeline. We want to see how the choice of what to do with a mere $5 quietly dictates not just massive long-term wealth, but, and I think this is the most fascinating part, an entirely different psychological reality.
Oh, absolutely. It changes everything.
We want to understand how this tiny pivot alters your relationship with your boss, with stress, and just, with your fundamental survival in the modern world.
The psychology behind that convenience store moment is fascinating because modern consumerism is essentially a highly optimized machine built to exploit it. Think about the layout of the checkout aisle, the pricing of those impulse items, the sensory design of the scratch ticket. It's all engineered to capture that exact untracked currency. The original analysis actually calls this $5 the price of not having to decide.
Oh, I love that phrase so much. The price of not having to decide.
It's perfect, isn't it?
It gets right to the heart of decision fatigue. By 6:40 p.m., your brain has already made thousands of decisions that day, and you just want a tiny hit of dopamine without having to weigh the pros and cons.
And that dopamine hit is crucial to understand here. You aren't buying a scratch ticket because you logically believe you will become a millionaire.
No, nobody actually thinks that.
Right. You're buying a 3-second escape from reality. You are buying the physical sensation of a cold drink. It provides a fleeting, immediate sensory reward, and then it is just gone. It leaves absolutely zero mark on your net worth, which is why we treat it like it doesn't matter. The smallness of the amount is the trap itself.
Okay, so let's reset the clock and look at the alternate timeline. You are 25 years old. It's the next evening, 6:40 p.m. You are standing at the exact same counter, looking at the exact same buzzing fluorescent lights. But this time, you leave the ticket on the counter.
You resist.
You resist. You put the drink back in the cooler. You walk out of the store with nothing. You sit in your car, but instead of digging for a quarter, you open an app on your phone. And you move that same $5 into an investment account.
Now we really have to break down the actual mechanics of what that means, because just, moving money isn't enough. The way this alternative path works relies on a very specific type of machinery.
Let's get into those mechanics. So you sit in the car and you move the $5 into a whole market index fund. And the source describes this setup as one button, no opinion required. You essentially set it up so that a total of $152 a month, which roughly equals $5 a day, leaves your checking account automatically.
Right, it has to be automatic.
Yeah, it leaves before you can spend it on something with a brightly colored wrapper.
We need to unpack two massive concepts here: the automation and the index fund itself. Let's start with the automation because that is the magic ingredient. If you rely on human willpower to manually open an app and transfer $5 every single day, you will fail.
Oh, 100%. Willpower is just a depleting resource.
It's exactly like a muscle that gets exhausted. Behavioral economists call it ego depletion. If you have to actively fight the urge to buy the energy drink every single day, eventually you'll have a terrible day at the office, your willpower will be zero, and you'll break the chain.
You'll just cave.
You'll cave. But by automating that $152 a month, you completely remove the daily friction of choice. The money vanishes from your checking account automatically. And remember the baseline reality we established, that money was going to disappear anyway. The only thing you have changed is the destination of the disappearance.
Okay, so the automation protects you from yourself. That makes sense. But let's talk about the destination, the whole market index fund. Because, why not just buy stock in a company you like? Why not buy shares of a tech company or like a popular shoe brand you wear?
Because buying individual stocks requires an opinion, and opinions introduce risk. When you buy a single company, you are betting that the executives won't make a terrible mistake, that a competitor won't destroy them, that the regulatory environment won't completely change overnight. A whole market index fund just removes that risk.
So break down how that actually works for someone who has maybe never touched an investment app. What is happening under the hood when that $5 goes in?
Sure. Think of the entire stock market as a massive, bustling farmer's market. Buying a single stock is like putting all your $5 into one specific apple stand.
Okay.
If that apple stand gets a bad batch of fruit or the owner gets sick, you lose your money. An index fund, on the other hand, is a mechanism where you take your $5 and you buy a microscopic fraction of a percentage of every single stand in the entire market.
So you own a tiny sliver of the apple stand, the bakery, the butcher, just everything.
Everything. A whole market index fund literally buys a piece of every publicly traded company. You own a sliver of the tech giants, the banks, the healthcare companies, the grocery chains. And the really brilliant part is that it is self-cleansing.
What do you mean by self-cleansing?
Well, if one company goes bankrupt and falls out of the market, the index fund automatically adjusts and replaces it with the next growing company. You don't have to monitor the news. You don't have to read financial reports. You are simply betting on the overarching premise that over long periods of time, human productivity and innovation will continue to push the global economy forward.
I see the logic, I really do, but I want to push back on how this actually feels for the 25-year-old sitting in their car. Because mathematically, yes, it sounds foolproof, but psychologically, it sounds completely miserable.
Oh, it feels terrible at first.
Right, you make this first transfer, you look at your phone screen, the balance is $5, it looks absurd. It looks like a child's piggy bank.
It completely lacks gravity.
Right.
We are so conditioned by movies and social media to associate investing with massive windfalls, with serious aggressive wealth.
Yeah, it feels like standing in the middle of a 1,000-acre dirt field, planting a single microscopic little seed and then proudly announcing to the world that you are a farmer.
That's a great way to put it.
It feels embarrassing. And there is no dopamine hit. When you scratch the lottery ticket, even when you lose, you get a 3-second thrill. Your heart rate elevates. When you drink the energy drink, you get an immediate spike of sugar and caffeine. But when you transfer $5 into an index fund, the screen blinks, your checking account is $5 lighter, and you are just sitting in a dark parking lot with nothing to show for it. How on earth does someone sustain a habit that offers absolutely zero immediate biological reward?
This right here is the crux of why most people never build wealth. Our brains are biologically wired in the Pleistocene era. We evolved to survive immediate threats and secure immediate calories.
Right, hunter-gatherer stuff.
Exactly. We did not evolve to conceptualize compound interest over 4 decades. We are wired to hunt and gather today. So when you bypass the immediate sensory reward of the convenience store and opt for a digital receipt that says $5, your brain genuinely feels cheated.
You could literally feel like you've just lost $5 for no reason.
And this is why the one-button, no opinion setup is the only way it works.
Yeah.
You aren't sustaining the habit through sheer willpower. You are letting the automation do the heavy lifting. You set the recurring transfer once, and then you just get on with your life. You let the feeling of being cheated fade away, because after a few months, you stop noticing the $152 is even gone.
Okay, so let's jump forward and see what this agonizingly slow process actually produces. Let's say you are 26 years old. A full year has passed since you bypassed the convenience store counter. 365 days of not buying the ticket, not buying the drink.
This is where the numbers start to tell a really interesting story about societal expectations.
So you open the app on your phone. Your balance reads roughly $1,900. Over the course of the year, you personally sacrificed and transferred $1,825 of your own money. The market, that massive self-cleansing farmers market we talked about, added the rest while you slept. Your total growth for the entire year is $75.
$75.
$75. You mentioned this at lunch to a coworker. He asks how much your little investing experiment made you. You tell him, and he laughs. And the analysis we're looking at makes a very sharp observation here. He doesn't laugh cruelly. He isn't trying to be mean.
No, he's just being honest.
Yeah, he is laughing honestly. He says, I make $75 in a single afternoon.
We have to validate the coworker's perspective here, because in the immediate term, he is entirely rational.
Yeah.
I mean, he spends his $5 a day on scattered, tiny pleasures. He gets the hot coffee, the corner store drinks, the scratch tickets when the jackpot hits $1 billion. Those are tangible comforts. From his vantage point, giving up a daily comfort for an entire year just to earn enough to pay for one decent dinner, it looks like a terrible trade.
Honestly, it is a terrible trade in year one. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of that 26-year-old, and $75 feels like an insult. You have practiced monk-like discipline every evening. You have denied your impulses 365 times, and your reward is a $75 digital phantom. At this specific moment, the difference between you and the guy crushing energy drinks every day is effectively negligible. So why shouldn't you just enjoy the drink?
Because the coworker is measuring the wrong metric. He's measuring the yield, but he is completely ignoring the direction. Our culture is obsessed with speed. We view wealth creation as something that is supposed to happen in a dramatic montage. We want to skip the boring part and get straight to the payout. But $75 isn't the point of year one. The point of year one is that you have successfully rewired your behavioral baseline.
So the habit is the actual asset being built, not the money.
Exactly. You are building a tolerance for slowness. You are learning to decouple your financial actions from your need for instant biological gratification. The coworker laughing at the $75 is trapped in a linear mindset. He thinks year two will just bring another $75 and year three will bring another. He doesn't understand that he's looking at the base of an exponential curve.
Which brings us to the next massive psychological hurdle. It's year 5. You are 30 years old. Your app says your balance is around $11,000. You've put in $9,000 of your own money, $5 at a time. The market has added $2,000. It's starting to look like real money.
It's a solid foundation.
Yeah, you look at that $11,000 and realize it is constructed entirely out of garbage you didn't buy. It's every plastic wrapper, every aluminum can, saved from a landfill and converted into equity. But just as you are feeling proud of this, the temptation of speed arrives.
The crypto distraction. This is such a brilliant inclusion in the narrative because it perfectly encapsulates the modern financial environment.
It really does. So a friend texts you a screenshot of a chart. It's some obscure cryptocurrency coin you have never heard of. The line on the graph is pointing straight up. It is up 400% in a single week.
We all got those texts a few years ago.
Right. Your friend put in $2,000. He texts you, calling you a coward for sitting in your boring index fund. He points out that your fund took 5 entire years to make what his digital coin made while he was eating breakfast.
Let's analyze what is actually happening in that text message exchange.
Yeah.
The crypto chart your friend sends looks identical to the psychological promise of a scratch ticket. It triggers the exact same neurological pathways. It promises that a small amount of money can become a life-changing amount of money instantly, with zero effort and zero time elapsed.
It is the digital equivalent of scratching the silver foil off a card.
Completely. It is dressed up in the language of technology disruption, but the underlying behavioral hook is ancient. It's the allure of the lottery. But the distinction drawn in this scenario is profound. The friend is right about the speed. He absolutely made more money faster, but he is entirely wrong about the direction.
Right about the speed, wrong about the direction. Let's break down why that matters, because 3 months later, the coin plummets 90%. Your friend loses almost everything he put in, and he stops talking about it entirely, just radio silence. Why is his approach so fragile?
Because it relies on timing and luck, neither of which are repeatable. The friend who chased the 400% pump and the coworker who laughed at the $75 are actually suffering from the exact same condition. They both require their financial actions to provide an immediate payoff. The coworker gets it through a sugar rush. The crypto friend gets it through a speculative mania. But when the sugar wears off and the mania collapses, they are left with nothing.
Meanwhile, the person quietly transferring the $5 is doing something radically different. They aren't trying to outsmart the market. They aren't trying to time a trend. They are just stacking bricks. They are learning to be, as the source described it, early to bed and slow to rich.
And that phrase, slow to rich, is arguably the most powerful concept we will cover today. Slowness is a feature. It's not a bug. By surviving the mockery of the coworker and surviving the FOMO, the fear of missing out induced by the crypto friend, you are building an incredible emotional callus. You are becoming immune to the noise.
Which is the perfect setup for what happens next. Because it's one thing to stay disciplined when you're slowly making money and everyone around you is getting rich quick. It is a completely different universe when everyone around you is losing everything.
The ultimate test. This is where it gets real.
Age 35. You are 10 years into this habit. You have pushed this boulder up the hill for a decade. Your balance is $27,800. You have personally sacrificed $18,000 of your own money. The market has given you nearly $10,000 in pure growth. And then the sky falls. A massive economic crash hits.
This is the moment that breaks almost everyone.
The news cycles are apocalyptic. The headlines are screaming about a historic collapse. You open your app and your balance is just plummeting. You lose a third of your portfolio's value in a matter of weeks. The reality is terrifying.
Yeah.
You just watched more money evaporate on paper in 3 weeks than you earned all year at your actual 9-to-5 job.
We really need to pause and inhabit the emotional terror of this moment. Think about the physical effort required to save $18,005 at a time. That is over 3,000 consecutive days of discipline. That is thousands of times you said no to a comfort. That money represents a massive chunk of your life energy.
Yeah, it's your life's work, basically.
Yeah. And suddenly, a graph in your phone plunges downward, and a third of that energy is just gone. The biological urge to act, to stop the bleeding, to flee is overwhelming. It triggers our deepest fight-or-flight instincts.
It's pure panic. You see friends panic selling. Someone texts you saying they sold everything at the bottom to stay safe in cash. They tell you they saw the writing on the wall. But what does our protagonist do?
They do absolutely nothing.
Nothing. You don't sell. You don't try to outsmart the dip. You don't pause the automation. The $152 just keeps quietly leaving your checking account every single month, exactly as it always has.
This is where we have to explain the mechanics of why doing nothing during a crash is actually an aggressive growth strategy. We talked earlier about the whole market index fund being like a farmer's market. During a crash, the market doesn't disappear. It just goes on sale.
Right. The businesses are still there.
Right. The underlying companies are still selling products, they're still generating revenue, but the price of their stock has plummeted due to widespread panic. By leaving your automation on, you are systematically buying into the market while everything is deeply discounted.
It's called dollar cost averaging, right? But without getting bogged down in the jargon, it essentially means you are buying more shares for your $5 today than you were a month ago.
Exactly. You are accumulating a larger slice of the pie when it is cheap. But doing this requires ignoring every instinct in your body.
I want to try an analogy here. Being in the stock market during a crash is like being on a commercial flight that suddenly hits extreme, violent turbulence.
Okay, I like this.
The plane is dropping hundreds of feet at a time. The overhead bins are shaking. The oxygen masks drop. People around you are screaming and crying. The biological instinct in that moment of terror is to escape. You want to pry open the emergency exit and jump out of the plane to find solid ground. But obviously, jumping out of a plane at 30,000 feet is fatal.
Yeah, it doesn't end well.
The only way you survive, the only way you reach your destination, is to literally sit on your hands, do absolutely nothing, and stay firmly strapped to your seat.
That is a brilliant analogy, because the action of jumping out is what kills you. The friend who sold everything to stay in cash. He opened the emergency exit. He locked in his losses and guaranteed he wouldn't be on board when the plane stabilized. But you stayed strapped in. Your automated transfer was your seatbelt. And the source analysis offers an incredible insight into this behavior. It notes, you are not brave. You are just bored enough to do nothing. And doing nothing turns out to be the rarest skill in finance.
It completely reframes how we think about financial success. We think it requires aggression and brilliance, like you have to be the Wolf of Wall Street. But actually, it requires extreme boredom and emotional detachment. You outsourced your discipline to an algorithm 10 years ago, so when your lizard brain panicked, the app just kept doing its job.
And the reward for enduring that turbulence becomes apparent very quickly. Which brings us to a fundamental shift in how this wealth interacts with the rest of your life.
Age 40, year 15. The market recovers, as it always historically has. Your balance is now $52,600. You put in $27,000. And here is the massive milestone. For the very first time, the account holds more money and growth than you actually fed it.
The scale tips. The momentum entirely shifts.
But something else happens at age 40. A harsh reality strikes your office. A coworker gets laid off unexpectedly. And this is an ordinary earner. He's lived a normal life, but he doesn't have a safety net. He has nothing standing between him and the utter devastation of a missed paycheck.
This changes the entire conversation. Up until now, we've been talking about the math of a retirement account. But this is the moment the true psychological value of the $5 habit reveals itself.
You look at this laid-off coworker, and you look at your invisible $52,600, and you realize that your $5 a day was never just about being rich when you're 65. It was an invisible wall being built between you and total ruin.
Let's explore the neurochemistry of work stress for a moment, because it's huge. When you live paycheck to paycheck, your baseline level of cortisol, the stress hormone, is chronically elevated. Your employer holds the keys to your actual survival. If your boss gets angry or a rumor of layoffs starts circulating, your body reacts as if a predator is in the room.
Yeah, because it is a survival threat.
Exactly. You have no buffer. Every minor workplace conflict is an existential threat.
Because if you lose the job, you lose the apartment.
That's the reality. But when you have $52,600 sitting in a highly liquid index fund, meaning you can access it if you absolutely have to, the power dynamic completely flips. You still show up to work, you still do a good job, but the desperation is gone. If the boss yells or the company downsizes, you know you have years of living expenses quietly waiting in the background. The $5 habit has essentially purchased a shield against panic. It lowers your daily cortisol levels. It makes you a calmer, more confident person.
But there is a very heavy, isolating reality to this too. When that coworker gets laid off, you take him out to lunch. You pay for his meal. But you don't say a single word about your safety net. You sit across from someone whose life is falling apart, and you realize you cannot share your victory. It would sound condescending. It would highlight his vulnerability. Your wealth has to remain silent.
That isolation is a core component of this journey. The path of delayed gratification is a lonely one because you are opting out of the collective coping mechanisms of your peers.
Which perfectly transitions into the next phase of the timeline. The isolation becomes even more stark, but the math becomes absolutely staggering. Let's look at age 45, 20 years since the convenience store.
Walk us through the numbers at year 20.
Okay, so your balance is roughly $89,000. You have contributed $36,000 over 2 decades. The account has more than doubled your money. But here is where the concept gets wild. The account has started working a second job that you never assigned it.
This is where we need to clearly explain the mathematical engine of compound interest.
Right, because earlier, the market only gave you $75 for a whole year of waiting, but now...
Now, because the balance is $89,000, even an average market return of, say, 7 or 8% generates $6,000 or $7,000 a year. Let's visualize how compounding works. Imagine you plant an apple tree.
Okay, I'm with you.
For the first few years, it's just a twig. You water it, you protect it, and it does nothing. That was year 1, the $75. But eventually, it grows large enough to produce an apple. Inside that apple are seeds. If those seeds fall to the ground, they grow into new trees. Compounding is what happens when the growth starts producing its own growth. The money you earn from the market is now earning its own money. It acts as a second, invisible worker who clocks in 247, doesn't need sleep, and works purely to expand your wealth. The amount this invisible worker generates annually is now eclipsing the $1,825 you put in yourself.
It is mind-blowing, and right as this invisible worker is hitting its stride, you go to a summer reunion, you drive up in an 8-year-old paid-off car, you walk in, and you see people who have leased luxury vehicles that cost more than their annual salary. You hear someone bragging about an expensive watch, and then across the room you see him, the old coworker. The one who laughed at your $75 19 years ago.
Oh, the ghost of the alternate timeline.
Exactly. He is still buying lunch out every day, still buying the scratch tickets, still trapped in the cycle of immediate consumption. He walks up to you, half joking, and asks if you ever stuck with that little investing app. You say yes. He asks how much is in there, and you tell him. You say $89,000.
What is the reaction?
The table goes completely quiet. It's an uncomfortable, suffocating silence. You immediately regret answering. You change the subject, and the reflection from the source material on this moment is so sharp. It says, the $5 was never loud. It was the one thing in the room that never needed to be.
Let's deeply analyze that silence. Why doesn't a win like this feel victorious? If you walked into that reunion and said, I just sold a startup for $1 million, or I won the lottery, people would cheer. They would toast you. They would want to celebrate. So why does saving $89,000 make everyone stare at their shoes?
Because it's an indictment.
Exactly. A lottery win is an act of God. A tech buyout is perceived as rare genius. Both are external events that the people at the table can dismiss as things that simply didn't happen to them.
Right. They can say, well, I just wasn't lucky.
Exactly. But the $5 habit. Everyone at that table had $5. Everyone at that table had the exact same opportunity every single evening for 20 years. When you state that number, you are holding up a mirror to the 10,000 tiny, unconscious choices they made differently. You are forcing the old coworker to confront every expensive lunch, every energy drink, every fleeting comfort he chose instead of his own future. It makes people deeply uncomfortable because it proves that their lack of wealth wasn't an inevitability, it was a choice.
It proves that the barrier to entry wasn't income, it was discipline. That is a tough pill for anyone to swallow. So, you learn your lesson, you keep the number silent, and we move to age 50, year 25.
The compounding snowball is really rolling now.
The balance is around $144,000. You've personally put in $45,000. The account has tripled your money without asking your permission. And this is the age where the societal narrative around you starts to turn very dark.
You start reading the news differently.
The headlines are bleak. They run feature stories about how most people your age have virtually zero savings. They talk about a retirement crisis, about how the math simply no longer works for ordinary earners, and how people will have to work until they die. But here is the massive irony. You are an ordinary earner. You did the same job as the people in those panicked articles. You made the same median salary. You paid the same rent, bought the same groceries, sat in the exact same traffic jams.
This highlights how consistent microscopic habits act as an absolute neutralizer to societal anxiety. The macroeconomic headlines are projecting doom, but your personal microeconomy is entirely insulated.
There is an incredible contrast drawn here about how different people view the future. The source says your friends view retirement as a cliff. They're being marched toward against their will, but you view it as weather.
That metaphor is staggering. Think about the psychology of a cliff. A cliff implies a violent, terrifying drop-off. It implies that one day, your ability to earn a paycheck will abruptly end, and you will fall into an abyss of poverty or dependency. You spend your entire 50s and 60s dreading the edge of the cliff.
Because you have no parachute.
Right, but weather. Weather is just a natural phenomenon. It arrives whether you worry about it or not. If you know a winter storm is coming, and you spent 25 years quietly stockpiling firewood and building a warm house, the storm doesn't terrify you. You just put on a sweater. Because you prepared for it invisibly, the future carries absolutely zero terror.
But again, you can't say that out loud. You watch your friends stress over the cliff, and you stay silent. And then we hit age 55, year 30. The balance is roughly $226,000. You've contributed about $55,000 in total. And here, the math crosses a threshold that completely alters reality. The account now grows more in a single strong year from its own sheer mass than you could possibly add by hand, even if you stopped eating and doubled your monthly deposits.
You have officially become irrelevant to your own wealth.
The thing you built is now bigger than the building of it. I picture it like spending 30 years hand cranking a massive heavy iron engine. For decades, it's just exhausting friction. But at year 30, the combustion finally catches. The engine roars to life. You take your hands off the crank, step back, and the machine just runs on its own internal power.
And the fuel for that engine is time. The narrative explicitly states you simply let time have the room to do its work. We spend so much energy trying to accelerate our lives, trying to hack the system, when the single most powerful force in finance, and perhaps in life, is uninterrupted time.
Which brings us to the finish line, the grand divergence. We have reached the end of the 40-year timeline. We are looking at two identical careers that yielded vastly, almost incomprehensibly different lives.
Let's break down the final numbers because they are the culmination of everything we've discussed.
You are 65 years old. It has been exactly 40 years since that evening at the convenience store when you left the ticket on the counter. The balance in your app is $531,000, over $500,000. And we are instructed to sit with the breakdown of this figure because the breakdown tells the entire story.
The three figures.
Right, total balance. $531,000, the amount you actually contributed, $5 at a time, month after month for 4 decades. $73,000. The remaining $458,000 is pure unadulterated growth.
Almost $500,000 that materialized out of thin air.
Money you never earned. You never clocked in for it. You never stressed over a spreadsheet for it. You never noticed the $5 leaving, and you never watched the $500,000 arrive. It just quietly accumulated in the background of your life. And the analysis explicitly demands that we demystify this. It says to the listener, you didn't get lucky. You didn't pick a winning stock. You didn't time a market bottom. You just skipped a scratch ticket and a can of something cold 40,000 times in a row.
The slowness was the price.
The slowness was the price. You paid for that $500,000 with 40 years of patience.
And that is a currency almost nobody is willing to spend. We live in a culture that demands the immediate clearing of all transactions. If I put in effort today, I want my reward today. To put in effort today for a reward that won't clear until the year 2066 is an act of profound psychological rebellion.
To really drive this point home, let's look at the old coworker one last time. He retires the exact same year you do. He worked the same job, had the same salary, never missed a shift. He was a good, hardworking person. Over 40 years, his version of the $5 also flowed through his hands. It added up to the exact same $73,000.
But where did his $73,000 go?
He spent it on 1,000 tiny scattered comforts. He drank it, he scratched it, he ate it, he tossed it on the passenger seat. The money existed in both timelines. You both stood at the same convenience store counters, holding the same bills.
And this is the ultimate revelation. There was never a single cinematic day where your two lives split. There's no dramatic fork in the road, no lightning strike of inspiration. There were just two different answers to the exact same incredibly boring question, what do I do with this $5? Asked again and again, every single evening.
It wasn't one big choice, it was 40,000 tiny choices that eventually compounded into two completely different realities. You still got to enjoy your life. You still went on vacations. You still ate good food. You just diverted a microscopic trickle of your income into an automated machine, and that machine employed an invisible worker who secured your entire future.
And this loops us right back to the very beginning, to the present moment. Because right now, somewhere, it is 6:40 in the evening, someone is standing at a counter holding a $5 bill, and the cashier is sliding a scratch ticket over.
And they're going to buy it.
Yeah.
And they are not doing anything maliciously wrong because $5 is nothing. It is too small to matter, which is why they will waste it. But it is also the door. Because it is too small to matter, it is the easiest thing in the world to redirect. You are never going to feel the $5 either way. You only get to choose what that invisible money is turning you into while you aren't paying attention.
The core insight of this entire deep dive isn't actually about finance. The $5 is just the mechanism. The index fund is just the tool. What this is really about is taking control of the unconscious friction of the modern world. The world is designed to separate you from your resources, your money, your time, your attention, in increments so small you won't fight back. By automating a different path, you are reclaiming agency over your own trajectory.
Okay, let's bring this all the way home. We've spent this whole deep dive talking about a literal $5 bill at a convenience store. We've tracked the math, the market crashes, the psychology of work stress, and the staggering reality of 40 years of compounding. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a question to chew on. Think about your own life right now, today. What is your metaphorical $5?
That's a great question.
Maybe it isn't a scratch ticket. Maybe it is 30 minutes of doom scrolling on your phone in bed instead of reading 10 pages of a book that challenges you. Maybe it is the emotional energy you spend complaining about a minor annoyance to your coworkers every single morning instead of focusing on a solution. Just like the physical $5 bill, you won't notice that 30 minutes of time or that block of mental energy vanishing today. It feels like nothing. It is the price of not having to decide. But what invisible account are you funding with those daily unconscious investments? And what kind of life is it compounding into 40 years from now? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time. Imagine standing in line at a bustling coffee shop. It's maybe 7 in the morning.
Yeah, prime rush hour.
Exactly. The espresso machines are hissing, people are shuffling forward, checking their watches, and, well, You're staring up at a $4 latte on the menu.
Which is pretty standard these days.
Right, and you order this drink every single day. It's your morning ritual. But today, for whatever reason, you pull out your phone, open your banking app, and you just stare at the balance.
Oh, that is a dreaded feeling for a lot of people.
It really is, because you're looking at exactly $41 to your name.
Wow.
And you're 34 years old. You are looking at that $4 price tag, and your brain starts calculating the percentage of your total net worth that this one cup of coffee represents.
Which is what, like 10%?
Roughly 10%. 10% of everything you have in the world gone in 10 minutes.
That's a staggering realization.
Yeah. So on this particular morning, a man named Derek looked at that number, felt this huge knot tighten in his stomach, and he just turned around and walked out the door. He walked away from the latte.
Which is a massive behavioral shift.
Completely. And he didn't know it at the time, but that incredibly subtle shift in behavior, that tiny refusal to just passively drain his account, it actually kicked off a 20-year journey that completely rewired his reality.
I love this story because it's so grounded.
It is. So we're taking a deep dive today into how someone goes from having $41, basically standing on the edge of the abyss, to building absolute impenetrable financial security. We're translating Derek's 20-year journey into a simple step-by-step guide for anyone who is struggling financially or living paycheck to paycheck right now.
And I think it's important to establish right off the bat that today is not about, complex Wall Street jargon or high-risk day trading.
No crypto bros today.
Yeah. Exactly. No crypto bros. We are going to deconstruct the psychological shift from constant survival mode to lasting financial confidence. Because wealth building for beginners is mostly about behavior, not math.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because things actually got significantly darker for Derek before they improved.
They usually do.
Right. So he leaves the coffee shop, gets in his car, and drives to his warehouse job. He clocks in, and he's still running that math in his head, how long $41 has to last him.
Which consumes a lot of cognitive energy.
Yeah, totally. And then 20 minutes into his shift, his supervisor pulls him off the floor and fires him.
Just brutal timing.
Just like that. And this was the third time he had been let go in a 2-year span. And the source material points out this really fascinating contextual detail about his upbringing here.
Right, about his parents.
Yeah, Derek didn't come from, severe destitution. His parents were blue-collar, hardworking people. They paid their bills on time. But they operated in total financial silence.
Which is so incredibly common.
The mechanics of money were just never discussed at the dinner table. They never sat him down and explained what a savings account actually does, or, the concept of inflation.
Or how to build a buffer. They just modeled this very reactive relationship with money.
Yes. You trade your time for a paycheck, you pay your immediate overhead rent, gas, groceries, and then whatever is left over is just meant to be consumed, like Friday night beers.
Yeah, and as a systemic failure of generational knowledge transfer. When we analyze financial instability, we have this tendency to look for the massive, catastrophic, inciting incident, right?
Like a medical emergency or something.
Exactly. We look for the sudden diagnosis or a housing market crash. But chronic scarcity rarely operates like that. The source material uses this term slow drip, which is, it's a highly accurate diagnostic label.
The slow drip. I like that.
Right, because the slow drip is insidious. It doesn't trigger any community alarm bells. It's just the normalization of deferred maintenance.
Oh man, like skipping the dentist?
Yes. You ignore the toothache because the dental copay disrupts the grocery budget. You drive on bald tires until one literally blows out on the highway.
Or deferring the oil change for a year.
Exactly. The phrase, "I will deal with it next month," just becomes the foundational operating system of your entire life.
But the psychological weight of that operating system, that's what crushes people. It breeds this very specific toxic shame.
It really does.
If you're 34 years old, you're working 50 hours a week, and you still have to put your groceries on a high-interest credit card, you internalize that as a profound moral failure.
You feel like it's a character flaw.
Right. You look around, see other people seemingly functioning just fine, and you conclude that you're just fundamentally broken.
And from a psychological standpoint, that internalized shame is actually one of the primary drivers of continued poverty.
Wait, really? How so?
Because shame is an incredibly paralyzing emotion. Behaviorally, it triggers an avoidance mechanism. When looking at your bank account causes visceral, physical pain, your brain just attempts to protect you by avoiding the stimulus altogether.
So you just stop looking.
Exactly. You stop opening the mail, you stop checking the app, You operate in this state of willful blindness, which, mathematically speaking, guarantees that the situation will just deteriorate further.
That makes so much sense.
Breaking out of generational money cycles requires a huge amount of emotional resilience, specifically because you have to decouple your self-worth from your current balance sheet.
You have to separate who you are from what you have?
Right. If you're playing this complex board game, and the person who handed you the game never taught you the rules because they didn't know them either, losing the game isn't a reflection of your intellect.
You're just operating without the instruction manual.
Precisely.
Okay, I hear that. And clinically, decoupling self-worth from a bank balance makes perfect sense. But I want to push back a little here on behalf of the listener.
Sure, go for it.
If someone listening to this deep dive right now is literally putting off an oil change just to afford groceries, or they have an eviction notice on their door, isn't telling them to focus on building long-term wealth almost, like insulting.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, how do you even begin a mental transition from feeling broke to feeling financially in control when the math says you might not have a roof in 10 days? It's like telling a starving person to plant an apple orchard.
It's terrible advice. And your pushback highlights a core flaw in traditional financial education.
Okay, tell me why.
Because when a human being is thrust into acute scarcity, the brain undergoes a radical shift. It's a phenomenon known as scarcity tunneling.
Scarcity tunneling, okay.
Yeah. The amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, essentially hijacks your executive function. Your biological hardwiring forces you to hyper-focus on the immediate threat.
Like a survival instinct.
Exactly.
Right.
If a tiger is chasing you, your brain does not care about your 5-year career plan, right?
Right, it cares about the next 10 seconds.
Yes. So when the threat is eviction, your brain physically cannot allocate cognitive bandwidth to concepts like compound interest or retirement accounts. It's impossible.
So traditional advice just bounces off.
Totally. The transition out of poverty cannot begin with a long-term projection spreadsheet. It has to begin with a physiological intervention. You have to introduce a behavioral action that is so small, so microscopic, that it just slips right past the amygdala's threat detection system.
I want the listener to really think about the slow drips in your own life right now. You know, what are those small, persistent alarms you've learned to mute? The squeaking brakes, the recurring subscription you keep forgetting to cancel, the minor health issue.
The tunneling effect makes us normalize all of that. We get used to living in a state of quiet emergency.
So let's look at how Derek disrupts this emergency state. He's fired, he's wandering aimlessly through this park, just processing the shock, and he sits down on a bench.
Enter Marcus.
Right. He meets this older man named Marcus. Marcus is in his 70s, wearing this frayed jacket, and he has this incredibly sharp situational awareness.
He spots Derek a mile away.
He does. He looks at Derek and says, "You look like a man carrying a bag of rocks."
Which is such a poetic way to describe financial stress.
It really is. He recognizes the body language of a man who just lost his job. So they start talking, and Marcus gives Derek a very specific, almost bizarre rule.
The 1% rule.
Yeah. Marcus tells him, every paycheck you ever get, before you touch a single dollar of it, take 1%. Put it in an account you cannot see. Do not think about it. Do not run the math on whether it is enough to matter. Just move the 1%.
And if we evaluate Marcus's 1% rule from the perspective of a patient, long-term financial advisor, it's an absolute masterclass in behavioral design.
Really? Better than standard budgeting tools.
Oh, far better for a beginner in crisis.
Yeah.
Most professional budgeting tools meant for low-income earners are fundamentally flawed.
How so? Like
Yeah.
the 50-30-20 rule.
Exactly. The 50-30-20 rule, 50% for needs, 30 for wants, 20 for savings, demands a massive, high-friction lifestyle overhaul.
Yep.
Or advisors will hand a struggling client this huge spreadsheet and demand they track every single penny spent over 30 days.
Right, and if you're hovering around zero, opening a spreadsheet with dozens of empty cells demanding to know where your non-existent money went, that's just a high-definition mirror reflecting your failure.
Yes. It induces the exact shame spiral we just talked about avoiding. It demands a level of executive function that scarcity tunneling has already shut down. The traditional tools just cause immediate cognitive overload.
You're asking someone who is exhausted to make 50 micro-decisions.
Exactly. But Marcus's 1% rule. The genius of it is that it reduces the cognitive load to a single, unarguable action.
Because it's just 1%.
Right. The entry fee is set so incredibly low that the brain's scarcity panic alarm doesn't ring. If you tell someone to save 20% of a tiny paycheck, their brain immediately calculates that they won't make rent. Panic sets in. They abandon the plan.
But nobody misses 1%.
Mathematically, it is insignificant to your daily survival. But psychologically, it's the catalyst for an identity shift.
So it's kind of like, okay, it's like telling someone who hates the gym, who is completely sedentary, to just put their sneakers on and stand in the living room for 2 minutes every morning.
That is a perfect analogy.
Like, it sounds ridiculous, right? They aren't going to build any muscle by standing in their living room.
The physical result is zero.
But they're building the invisible muscle of a habit. They are becoming the kind of person who prepares to exercise. So the 1% rule is the financial equivalent of just putting on the shoes.
You're establishing the neuromuscular pathway of the habit before you add the heavy weight. At this early stage, the yield, the actual dollar amount, is completely irrelevant. The mechanical act of moving the money is the entire point.
Okay, so let's track how this mechanical act plays out for Derek in reality, because month 1 is a brutal reality check. We need to walk through this paycheck to paycheck survival sequence for the listener.
We do, because it's not glamorous.
Not at all. Derek spends 3 weeks applying for jobs, staring at late rent notices, battling that internal voice asking, what's the point? Finally, he gets a job. But it's a brutal night shift stocking shelves at a grocery store for $11 an hour.
Heavy physical labor.
Very heavy. And at the end of his first pay period, his check clears. It is for exactly $327.
So we really need to define a clear sequence of actions for a beginner here, because month 1 is not about wealth building. It is strictly triage.
Right, because that $327 was immediately vaporized, wasn't it?
Completely. According to the source, he had overdue rent to keep a roof over his head. He had a final shutoff notice for his electricity. He needed gas to get back to the job.
So after all those non-negotiable bills, he had $11 left.
$11. He walked into the grocery store where he worked and bought a bag of bulk rice and chicken thighs for $8.
So wait, that means after his first paycheck on this new wealth-building journey, his savings rate was literally zero.
It was zero. And that is perfectly fine. I really want to validate this for anyone listening who might be in month 1 right now.
Please do.
Survival is step 1. You cannot build a future sleeping in your car. It is perfectly fine, mathematically and morally, if month 1 yields zero savings because you had to stabilize your shelter, food, and utilities.
You just have to stop the bleeding first.
Exactly. Stop the bleeding.
Okay, so month 1, the bleeding stops. Now we transition to month 2, and this is where the first real action happens. By month 2, Derek is current on his bills. The fridge isn't totally empty. He's not drowning anymore.
He's on a razor's edge, but he can breathe.
Right. So the next paycheck hits. Again, $327. He does the math on Marcus's rule. 1% is $3.27.
Barely pocket change.
And he transfers it to a free, separate savings account. Let's outline the concrete steps for the listener here. How do you automate this when you are living on such a tight budget?
Well, you have to rely on automation, not willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. When you're stressed, it depletes quickly. Automation bypasses that completely.
So what's step 1 for the listener?
Step 1 is architectural. You must open a secondary, free savings account at a completely different bank than your primary checking account.
Why a different bank, just so it's not in the same app?
Exactly. The user interface of modern banking is too seamless. If your savings is linked in the same app, the friction to access it is zero. You have a fleeting impulse for takeout, and it takes one swipe to move the money back.
So by putting it at a different bank, you're building a wall.
You're introducing artificial friction. A transfer between different institutions takes a day or two to clear. That waiting period acts as a circuit breaker for your impulse control.
That's incredibly smart.
And step 2 is setting the automated transfer for the exact morning your paycheck hits. Don't wait until the end of the month to save what's left over, because there will never be anything left over.
Right, the money just mysteriously vanishes.
Always. You calculate the 1%, set the automation for payday, and let the system do the heavy lifting.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. $3.27 feels like a joke. You can't even buy a gallon of gas with that in most places. How does moving $3 actually change someone's life?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. The $3 isn't the point. It's the awareness that the $3 creates.
The awakening.
Yes. By repeating this habit weekly, Garrick essentially wakes up.
The source material details this perfectly. He starts noticing the ambient noise of his own spending. It's like he can suddenly see the matrix of where his money goes.
Because once you track the outflow, you can't unsee it.
Right. He realizes he's spending $1.50 on a vending machine pastry on his breaks. He's buying a $3 energy drink 4 nights a week. He finds a $9.99 streaming app he hasn't used in months.
And the 1% wasn't a ceiling, it was just the doorway. By month 3, because his awareness is so heightened, he voluntarily bumps his savings to $3 a day,
Which is about $90 a month.
which is a massive leap from zero.
It is. And we need to emphasize something crucial here. Derek did not cut everything. He wasn't living on plain rice and tap water forever.
Now, extreme deprivation usually backfires.
Exactly. So let's give the listener a quick checklist. What are 3 easy ways to start saving right now without feeling completely deprived of daily comforts?
Okay, number 1, audit your unused digital subscriptions.
The silent killers.
Right. Pull 30 days of bank statements. Look for the apps, the software, the streaming services you don't use. Cancel them. If you actually miss one a week later, you can always turn it back on.
But you probably won't. What's number 2?
Number 2 is swapping one weekly convenience purchase. We call these high-frequency convenience traps.
Like the energy drinks.
Yes. If you need a caffeine hit for a night shift, telling you to just drink water is terrible advice. You'll be miserable. Instead, buy those energy drinks in bulk at a grocery store and bring one with you. You get the exact same comfort, but you eliminate the premium you pay for the convenience of the break room vending machine.
I love that. Substitute the delivery mechanism. Don't deprive yourself of the actual reward. Number 3.
Number 3 is implementing a 24-hour quarantine on non-essential digital purchases.
Oh, because everything is one click now.
E-commerce is engineered to trigger dopamine the second you click buy. It's immediate gratification. So put the item in your cart, but force yourself to close the app and wait 24 hours.
Just to disrupt the loop.
Exactly. It forces your rational brain to step in. Most of the time, by the next morning, the emotional urge to buy the thing has completely vanished.
That is so actionable. But as Derek starts using these systems and waking up, he hits a massive roadblock. And it's one that derails so many people.
The social friction.
The social friction. The peer pressure. Derek goes to a weekend barbecue with his old friends, and his friend Craig finds out about this little financial project Derek is doing.
And Craig does not handle it well.
No, Craig decides to mock him in front of everyone. He laughs and says, that stocking shelves and saving $3 a day is just a piggy bank, not real investing.
Which is incredibly condescending.
So condescending. And the source notes that Derek felt this immense, crushing loneliness in that moment. He was so humiliated, he actually thought about pulling out his phone, emptying the savings account, and buying a round of drinks just to get the group's approval back.
He almost threw away the entire 20-year trajectory for a guy at a barbecue.
Yeah, but he remembered Marcus and he stayed the course. But
Yeah.
why is this so common? I mean, we all have a Craig in our lives, right?
Oh, absolutely.
A person who projects their own financial insecurities onto you.
It's actually deeply rooted in evolutionary biology. Humans are highly tribal. For thousands of years, conforming to your peer group meant survival. Being exiled meant death.
So going against the grain triggers a biological alarm.
Right. When you suddenly change your financial habits, you are implicitly violating the norms of your tribe. Craig is probably drowning in his own financial chaos.
So Derek's discipline makes Craig look bad.
Exactly. When Derek stops spending every dime he makes, it forces Craig to confront his own lack of discipline. The easiest defense mechanism for Craig is to just tear Derek down, make it a joke, so Craig doesn't have to change his own behavior.
It's a crabs in a bucket thing.
Yes, if one crab tries to climb out, the others pull it back down.
So how does a beginner navigate this? Because the criticism from friends during a financial lifestyle change is brutal.
You have to adopt a specific strategy for managing that friction. First, you have to accept that choosing financial health will probably cause some temporary social isolation.
Which is tough to hear.
It is, but you can't expect the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries to applaud when you finally set some. Tactically, you can use the gray rock method.
What's that?
You just give dull, unarguable responses. You don't try to explain the 1% rule to Craig. You don't try to convert him. You just say, yeah, I'm just funding some personal goals right now, and change the subject. Remove all the entertainment value from the confrontation.
And really, changing your social habits is vital to maintaining your focus. If you are constantly modifying your behavior just to manage the insecurities of people around you, you're going to stay broke.
And you'll end up resenting the friends you went broke trying to impress.
Exactly. Overcoming this specific social fear, the fear of being judged as cheap or boring, is vital to achieving lasting mental stability. You might have to skip the Friday night beers for a while. Feels lonely.
But you're building a bridge.
Right. And the payoff for crossing that bridge is huge. So let's look at the first milestone. 13 months into this process, Derek crosses the $1,000 mark in savings.
Which is a beautiful moment in the source material.
It acts as literal rocket fuel for him. It proved that a guy with absolutely zero financial education could build something out of nothing.
We really need to highlight the emotional benefits of reaching that first financial milestone. Because $1,000 isn't going to solve every problem. You aren't retiring on it.
Right, it doesn't buy a house.
No, but it completely rewires your identity. When you live paycheck to paycheck, every minor inconvenience, a flat tire, a sick day, is an existential crisis that spikes your cortisol.
It's the slow drip again.
Exactly. And living with high cortisol degrades your decision making. But having that $1,000 sitting in a separate account, it acts as a chemical dampener.
It lowers the panic.
It drops the cortisol. You shift your baseline from constant panic to stability. You walk differently, you speak differently, you aren't desperate anymore.
And we see this play out around this exact same time. His manager at the grocery store notices this quiet confidence in him.
Because he's not projecting panic anymore.
Right, he's showing up early, he's focused. So the manager moves him to the day shift and gives him a $2 raise.
This is a textbook example of habit stacking.
Habit stacking. Unpack that for us.
It's this concept where small, persistent actions bleed into other areas of your life. When you successfully save $3 a day, you prove to yourself that you possess discipline.
Self-efficacy.
Yes. And that discipline stacks. Saving $3 stacks into arriving on time. Arriving on time stacks into caring about the job. That stacks into a raise, which then increases your top-line revenue, allowing you to save even more.
It's a compounding loop of positive reinforcement. If you're a young adult navigating your first years of independent living listening to this right now, take note. These small early wins, they compound into major career momentum.
Completely. And once that emergency buffer is built, Derek shifts from defense to offense.
Right, he demystifies boring wealth, he avoids the flash, the gurus, he opens a simple brokerage account, and he starts putting $100 a month into a broad market index fund, and he just sets it and forgets it.
Which is the ultimate strategy.
So let's bring this all the way back to the beginning. Derek walked away from a $4 latte. Let's explain the basic concept of compound interest to a beginner using that coffee as an analogy.
Okay, I like this.
If you buy the $4 latte, the transaction is closed. It's gone in 10 minutes. But if you take the cost of that latte and put it into a boring index fund, the money starts having its own little money babies.
That's a fun way to phrase it.
Right. Let's use the snowball analogy. It's like you're at the top of a long, snowy hill. You pack a tiny snowball, that's your initial coffee money. You roll it down, and it picks up a thin layer of snow. That's your interest.
But the magic is in the surface area.
Exactly. With that new layer of snow, the snowball is slightly bigger. So on the next rotation, it picks up more snow than it did the first time. The interest is earning interest. By the time it hits the bottom of the hill, it's this massive boulder.
That geometric growth is everything. And just to define some key terms simply, a brokerage account is just the vehicle. It's the account you open to buy investments.
And the index fund.
The index fund is the engine inside the vehicle. Instead of trying to guess which one company will succeed, an index fund buys you tiny, fractional pieces of hundreds of the most profitable companies in the world all at once.
So you don't have to be a stock-picking genius.
No. It's beautifully, powerfully boring. The math does all the heavy lifting. You just set the automated transfer and go live your life.
Okay, so let's look at the timeline, because this timeline shows how persistent small savings actually transform into security. Year 1, Derek has $1,200.
A great start.
Year 2, he hits $2,600. Year 5, as the snowball gains momentum and his career grows, he hits $8,000.
And he's avoiding lifestyle creep this whole time.
Exactly. Year 15, the growth curve goes vertical. He has $130,000, and by year 20, the balance is over $235,000.
That is the power of time.
Today, Derek is 57. He owns his home, paid off 3 years early. And the source gives us this incredible contrasting moment. Last winter, his car broke down.
The alternator, right?
Yes, 20 years ago, in month 1, a broken alternator would have been an extinction-level event.
The slow drip of catastrophe. He would have lost his job, faced eviction.
But in year 20, he just didn't panic. He called a tow truck, paid the mechanic with his debit card, and went about his day.
And that contrast, that is the feeling of quiet financial control.
It really is.
Shifting from a survival mindset builds this impenetrable long-term confidence. You can't fake the feeling of paying cash for an emergency. You can't buy that overnight.
No, it's built on thousands of small, unglamorous choices.
So what does this all mean for our listener?
Well, it means that the gap between where you are, maybe staring at $41, and where you want to be, feels impossibly wide. But time handles the heavy lifting if you just provide the momentum.
You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to read 10 finance books.
And you don't need to wait for things to settle down, because they never do.
Never. You just need to start today, even if it's with $3.27.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. But we want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over.
Yeah, think about Marcus. He was the catalyst that changed Derek's entire family tree.
Right.
So take a hard look at your own life right now. Who in your circle is currently playing the role of Craig, subtly keeping your balance at zero with their judgments?
And more importantly, how can you become your own Marcus by the time you wake up tomorrow morning?
That's the real question.
Thank you all for listening. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, our mission is exploring this really remarkable source we have from Sunny Finance, and it basically reveals how daily, tiny habits create massive long-term financial wealth.
Yeah, and it's not, the usual complicated jargon. It's a very human look at money.
Right, exactly. So I want you to picture a scene, and I'm guessing it is one you are intimately familiar with. It is 6:40 p.m. You have just finished a long, grueling day, like the kind of day that completely drains your executive function.
Oh, we all know that feeling. You are basically running on fumes.
Totally. So you are standing at the counter of this brightly lit convenience store. You have got a $5 bill already in your hand.
Just waiting to get rid of it, basically.
Yeah. And in your other hand, you are holding an energy drink. It is sweating, coals from the fridge, and the cashier slides a scratch ticket across the counter towards you, barely even looking up.
And this is the critical moment right here.
Exactly. $5. You hand it over. You do not even think about it. Nobody thinks about it. You take that ticket out to your car, you sit in the parking lot under those buzzing yellow lights, and you scratch it with a quarter from the cup holder.
And let me guess, you win nothing.
Nothing. Zero. You drop it on the passenger seat where there are already 3 other losing tickets from earlier in the week. You crack open the drink, take a sip, and you drive home. And by tomorrow morning, you will not even remember this happened.
It is such a perfectly mundane scene, and that is exactly what makes it so incredibly dangerous from a behavioral economics standpoint.
How so? It's just $5.
Right, but that $5 bill is the literal price of not having to decide. It is the exact threshold of money that completely vanishes from your life without leaving a single mark on your memory.
I mean, that makes sense. It's not enough to really hurt.
Exactly. In the realm of mental accounting, it is just a rounding error. It is too small to budget for, too small to stress over, and crucially, too small to trigger the pain centers in your brain that usually fire when you part with your money. It just evaporates into the friction of daily life.
Right, because, if that scratch ticket cost $50, you would pause. You would evaluate the utility of that $50.
Oh, for sure. You would think about the groceries it could buy, or, a tank of gas.
Yeah. But $5 exists in this bizarre liminal space where our brains just refuse to assign it any long-term weight. So our mission today is to take that exact same $5, that rounding error, and subject it to a stress test.
I love this framing.
We are going to track it across a 40-year timeline. We are examining the compounding mechanics of 2 completely diverging lives, based entirely on what they do with that exact same $5 every single day.
And as we trace this narrative, I want to challenge you, the listener, to keep that crisp $5 bill in your mind. Because you are going to realize that this seemingly insignificant piece of paper represents both a psychological trap and, strangely enough, an escape hatch.
Well, let's pull the lever on that escape hatch then. We are jumping right into phase 1, the initiation. It is the very next evening at 6:40 p.m. You are 25 years old. You are back at that same convenience store counter looking at that same cashier.
But this time, it goes differently.
Right. This time you refuse the cold can. You refuse the scratch ticket. You walk out the glass doors with absolutely nothing in your hands. You get into your car, sit down, and instead of digging a quarter out of the cup holder, You pull out your phone.
And here is where the absolute novice, like the person who has never invested a single dime, begins building the machinery.
Yeah, the text from Sunny Finance actually gives a literal step-by-step guide for this. Step 1, you just download an investing app.
Super simple, and the mechanics here have to be brutally simple because human willpower is a finite resource. If the process requires daily active decision-making, it will fail. You will eventually just buy the energy drink again.
So true. Okay, step 2. You take that exact $5, the money you just retained by bypassing the counter, and you move it into a broad market index fund. An index fund that tracks the whole market.
Yeah, and we are not talking about trying to find an edge here. You use the what they call the one button, no opinion required approach.
I love that phrase. No opinion required.
Right, you just buy the entire macroeconomic basket. The goal at this stage is not outperformance, it is behavioral rewiring.
Which brings us to step 4, the most critical step.
Yeah.
You automate it. You calculate that $5 a day is roughly $152 a month. So you set it up so that $152 leaves your account automatically.
Ideally, the moment your paycheck hits.
Exactly. You automate it so you never have to feel the decision. The money is just gone before you can spend it on something with a shiny wrapper.
You construct a system where the money is forcefully removed from your possession before you can ever stand at that brightly lit counter and be tempted.
But I have to play devil's advocate here. Because if you actually do this as a total beginner and you look at your screen, your portfolio balance says $5, it looks ridiculous.
It really does.
The text uses this great analogy. It says, it feels like a man planting a single seed in an empty field and calling it a farm.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
Right, because the friction of the convenience store is gone, sure, but so is the dopamine. When you scratch a ticket, you get a thrill, you get a number scratched off. Moving $5 into a fund on a glowing screen is so entirely anticlimactic. Why is the lack of a thrill actually a good thing?
What's fascinating here is how we conflate the sensation of an action with its actual utility. The $5 disappears either way.
Okay, yeah.
Whether it is burned on the counter or automated into a brokerage account, it is physically gone from your immediate spending power. The automation simply removes the friction of choice. It fundamentally changes where the money vanishes, not if it vanishes.
So you are basically tricking yourself.
Exactly. You are choosing boredom. But while that initial setup is easy, the true challenge begins exactly 1 year later. That is when the world starts offering feedback on this tiny habit.
And the market is rarely kind to our need for validation. So we move into phase 2. You are 26 now, a full year has passed, you have held the line, you check the app, your balance is approximately $1,900.
Okay, let's look at that math.
Right, so you run the mental math. You quietly put in $1,825 of your own money, $5 at a time. That means the market added just $75 while you slept.
$75 for an entire year of discipline.
It feels like an insult. You mention this to a coworker during lunch. You explain the whole system, and he laughs. He points out that he makes $75 in an afternoon of overtime.
And mathematically, in a vacuum, he is correct.
Yeah.
But let's unpack that coworker's mindset. Where is his daily $5 going?
Probably to the convenience store.
Exactly. His capital is scattered across 100 tiny, unnameable pleasures. Daily lunches, energy drinks, scratch tickets. If you asked him to list what he spent that money on over the last year, he couldn't do it.
He has absolutely nothing to show for it.
Nothing. Which is why the $75 is not what matters here. The invisible habit is the real asset being built. You are building the neural pathway of paying your future self first.
The machine is the asset. I love that. So you ignore the coworker, you keep going. Fast forward 5 years, you are 30 now. The balance is $11,000 and you contributed $9,000 of that.
So it's growing.
It is. But then a friend texts you out of the blue.
Okay.
It is a screenshot of some crypto coin or ticker that is up 400% in a week. And he essentially calls you a coward for sticking to a boring fund.
Oh, the classic FOMO tech.
Yeah. So my question is, how do you mathematically and emotionally combat that peer pressure? Your friend just made in a week what your boring fund makes in a year. Biologically, that triggers immense pain.
We despise watching our peers outpace us. It's a human nature. But we have to draw a direct thematic line back to the convenience store parking lot here.
Okay, how so?
This 400% spike, this screenshot your friend sent, it is the exact same shape and promise as the scratch ticket.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it like that.
It is the promise that a small amount of capital becomes large instantly with no time in between. Your friend is just playing a digital scratch ticket. It engages the exact same dopamine receptors.
So he just happened to win the lottery that day.
Exactly. And relying on lottery wins is not a financial strategy.
Which perfectly sets up the outcome from the text. 3 months later, that friend's coin is down 90%. And he completely stops mentioning it.
The screenshots dry up pretty fast when it crashes.
They really do. And meanwhile, you just keep doing the most boring thing a person can do with money, which is being early to bed and slow to rich.
Surviving FOMO is a huge milestone.
It is, but surviving FOMO is one thing. Surviving absolute terror is another. Which brings us to phase 3, year 10. You are 35 years old.
This is where it gets real.
Yeah. The balance is roughly $27,800. You contributed $18,000, so there is nearly $10,000 in pure growth. You feel great. And then the market crashes.
A true black swan event.
Right. Headlines scream panic. In a matter of weeks, a third of your total account balance simply vanishes. Just gone.
It is terrifying.
And this introduces another character from the Sunny Finance source. The safe friend. This is the friend who calls you up and says he sold everything at the bottom of the crash to stay in cash. He claims he is now safe.
The illusion of safety.
So what does this all mean? Because instinctually, when a fire breaks out, you run. Why is freezing in place the right move here?
Because it demonstrates the rarest skill in finance, the profound psychological strength in doing nothing.
Doing nothing.
Yes, doing nothing is softer and quieter than a decision. You simply do not open the app, you do not hit sell, you let that automated $152 keep transferring every month.
Even while everything is burning down.
Especially then, because it is buying the fun while it is cheaper than it has been in years.
I want to unpack a specific quote from the source here because it really stuck with me. It says, "You are not brave, you are just bored enough to do nothing." And doing nothing turns out to be the rarest skill in finance.
It is a brilliant quote, because when the market inevitably recovers, your boring habit quietly bought the bottom that nobody else could see. Everyone else was panicking, and you were just aggressively accumulating shares on clearance.
Just blindly dollar cost averaging into the abyss.
Exactly. And this silent endurance eventually forces the math to fundamentally change its character.
Which transitions us perfectly into phase 4, ages 40 to 50, the tipping point.
This is my favorite part of the timeline.
It is so rewarding. So, you are 40 years old, 15 years in. Your balance is $52,600. And for the very first time, the account holds more money than you fed it. You contributed $27,000 and the growth has surpassed it.
The crossover point.
The source has this great analogy for it. It says, you are pushing a stone uphill $5 at a time, but now the stone is rolling on its own. Your only job is to not stand in front of it.
You just have to get out of its way.
Right, but it is not just spreadsheet math. Real life happens. A coworker at your job gets laid off with absolutely zero cushion. The terror on his face is palpable.
And this is where we see what the $5 was really buying. It was never just about a far-off tropical retirement. That $52,000 is an invisible wall between you and a panic-inducing bad year.
It is private security against disaster.
Exactly. If you got laid off, you wouldn't panic. You have an invisible shield.
So let's move to age 45. 20 years in, the balance is $89,000. You only contributed $36,000. You go to a reunion.
Oh, reunions are the ultimate test of ego.
They really are. You pull up in an 8-year-old paid-off car. Meanwhile, the parking lot is full of least expensive cars. Inside, people are flashing loud watches.
Performing wealth rather than possessing it.
Exactly. So you sit down, and the old coworker is there, the same one who laughed at your $75 return 2 decades ago. He asked how that little app is doing. You tell him it is at $89,000. And the table just goes completely silent.
That silence speaks volumes.
Why does it go so quiet?
Because your $5 was never loud. It never needed to be. The leased cars are loud because they require external validation. But the reality of your wealth, built through quiet discipline, forces everyone at that table to confront their own choices. They realize they could have done exactly what you did.
They just chose the scratch tickets.
Right. And that is a deeply uncomfortable mirror for them to look into.
Wow. Okay, so age 50. 25 years of the habit. Your balance is $144,000. It has literally tripled your $45,000 contribution.
Yeah.
And right around this age, the headlines you read start changing.
They get very doom and gloom.
Very. Everything is saying, Ordinary earners can't afford retirement. It is framed as a massive crisis.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is fascinating because you are an ordinary earner. You are exactly who those headlines are talking about.
I mean, you made the same salary, paid the same rent, sat in the same traffic as everyone else.
The only difference, the literal only difference, was refusing the cold can and the scratch ticket.
Which changes how you view getting older.
Entirely. Your peers view retirement as a cliff they are being marched toward against their will. But you view it as weather. It arrives whether you worry or not. But you have a well-insulated house.
I love that. A cliff versus weather. And by age 55, you officially lose control of the math in the best way possible. Phase 5, the passenger phase.
The passenger phase is where the magic really happens.
Yeah, so at 55, the balance is $226,000. You contributed about 55 grand. At this point, the account grows more in a strong year from its own size than you could manually add even if you doubled your contributions.
You are just along for the ride now.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You have become a passenger to your own balance. The thing you built is officially bigger than the building of it.
It is entirely self-sustaining.
Which brings us to the finish line, age 65. 40 years from the evening you skip the scratch ticket. We finally get to see the final staggering numbers.
Let's hear them.
40 years later, the balance is $531,000.
$500,000.
Let's have you slowly walk through this math because it is wild.
Yeah, let's break it down. You contributed exactly $73,000 over those 40 years, $5 at a time, which means the remaining $458,000 is pure growth.
458 grand that you never worked a single hour for.
Right. It is vital to point out there was no luck here, no timing the market, no stock picking. The only mechanism was letting the smallest possible amount sit in the most boring place for the longest possible time.
It was almost too simple.
But slowness was the price. And almost nobody is willing to pay in a currency that takes 40 years to clear.
To really drive this home, the text contrasts this with the coworker who retires the exact same year, the one who laughed. He also spent exactly $73,000 on his $5 daily habits over those same 40 years.
The exact same amount of raw capital went through his
And
hand.
he drank it, he scratched it, he ate it. He has a pension, sure, and some memories he can't even point to, but you have those same small pleasures, mostly, plus $500,000 acting as a second person who has been working the whole time.
A tireless worker who never took a vacation. And what is so profound is that there was no singular dramatic day where those two lives split.
There's no movie montage.
Right. It was just two different answers to the same tiny $5 question asked every evening until the answers stopped being choices and became two completely different lives.
So somewhere right now, it is 6:40 p.m. and someone is holding a $5 bill. The trap is that $5 is too small to matter to most people. But that is exactly why it decides everything for the few who keep it.
Because you are never going to feel the $5 leaving your pocket either way. So if the pain of losing $5 is identical whether you spend it on fleeting sugar or invest it in your future, it begs a massive question.
What is that?
What other invisible daily choices are currently quietly deciding the person you will become a decade from now without you even paying attention?
Wow. That is something to think about. Well, thank you to everyone for joining this deep dive. Look at the small change in your pocket a little differently today. We will catch you next time.